together, I'll hold you tight. When we're together, we'll be alright. When we're together, we'll be okay. Be okay. Be okay. Be okay. Come back to me. When we're together, we'll be alright. When we're together, I'll hold you tight. When we're together, we'll be alright. When we're together, we'll be okay.
Much better. I think. Okay. Okay. Everything seems fine now. I wanted to check out. Let's move this guy. Wanted to check out some space stuff today. Space Sunday, of course.
I can't believe it.
So we're gonna watch. I've been following Star Citizen from afar for a while. On paper, I like the game. Morphologist is like one of the biggest content creators. For Star Citizen, I think for Star Citizen right now, he puts out really quality content. So I wanted to watch his video today.
We're already here at the end of 2022, and if you've been following Star Citizen for a while, you'll know what that means. We are nearing the next patch for Star Citizen, 3.18. Unfortunately though, if you've not been following the news, you may not know that that patch has been moved back until at least December, where it was originally planned to come out with the IAE, the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, the biggest ship sale of the year. Unfortunately, it's due to the fact that persistent entity streaming is a pretty difficult technology to pin down, and they want to make sure they get it right so that they can stay on schedule for getting us server meshing next year along with the new star system, Pyro. However, the topic of today's video isn't the IAE or even necessarily 3.18 as a whole, but a specific feature as part of that patch that has had some interesting development in the recent days on the Spectrum forums, and that's the cargo refactor.
A couple months ago.
Now I know what you might be thinking.
Cool.
I'm not a cargo runner, and this doesn't really matter too much to me. But let me tell you, this is going to change the way that everybody plays the game from here on out. It is a massive change that I was not expecting to see until sometime next year when we finally got things like targetable life support and subcomponents that could be replaced using the new maintenance system. And that's the concept of ship soft death, where your ship is disabled but not destroyed, leaving you and potentially whatever's inside intact for the time being. What does this mean exactly, and how is all this going to work?
That would be so sick, because I've played Elite Dangerous on stream, and the problem with that game is in theory, pirating would be really cool. But the way the physics work, when you disable a ship in the game, the ship just keeps floating. So you if you were to try and open the ship up, all the stuff in the hole just gets spread everywhere. It's just useless, right? So space games have a really hard time trying to figure out these mechanics, and if they can get it going, I'd play it.
Work. Well, stay tuned. I'm going to tell you about that and more that was revealed in the AMA with Dan Griffiths, the lead designer over there at CIG in charge of the cargo refactor. And if by the end of this video you found it informative and you like what I do, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to show your support. Alright, so if you guys don't know, CIG occasionally does these AMAs, these Ask Me Anythings on the Spectrum forums to allow members of the community to get involved asking developers questions about new features. And a recent AMA featured the new cargo refactor, which I initially kind of wrote off as just kind of technology and not really anything that interesting for the next patch. However, I was pretty wrong, because there's a number of really great features.
Today is Space Day. We could play some Star Citizen. I don't know if it's that stable right now.
That are coming with 3.18 and the cargo refactor, which are going to change the way that we play the game in a pretty significant way. So Dan Griffiths answered a bunch of really good questions, and I kind of want to go over those quickly before we get to the really juicy stuff. One of the things he talked about, which was asked about, was the way that we'd be loading cargo. It was asked whether or not we would have cargo timers in 3.18, and the answer to that question is no. It's going to work exactly as it is now, where if you buy stuff, it immediately appears in your cargo. So there's not going to be the act of physically loading yet, and this comes down to the fact that they still need to work out how they're going to allow people to use tractor beams inside of safe zones without killing each other. Because believe it or not, this was actually done before when they originally introduced tractor beams. You can actually use them along with the med guns inside safe zones, but what ended up happening is that players were chasing each other around, ODing each other, and crushing each other with large objects. So they want to figure that out first before they reintroduce it, and I get that.
Of course.
The other thing that was asked was whether or not we would have cargo grid snapping, because if you look at the way that cargo's stacked when you buy it in game right now, all of the cargo is very neatly arranged on the cargo grid. The answer to that question is yes. So when you get out of the safe zone and you can use your tractor beam, you can actually take off cargo from the grid and then replace it, and it should snap in place, allowing you to pretty neatly stack things in your cargo. However, another player then asked, well, if you have boxes outside of the cargo grid, would that still be sellable if it's inside the ship? The answer to that question was also yes, which is basically what we have right now, which is pretty nice, it's pretty convenient, but it also means that you can kind of cheese the amount of cargo your ship holds. If you've got more space, say in the crew cabin, you can actually just load that with stuff and still sell your things. So we'll see how that gets changed in the future. Another community member also asked whether or not we would be getting the commodity prices in 318, and unfortunately, no, not yet, because they're waiting apparently for the physical cargo lifts to be able to change those prices, because it's going to affect how much you're able to load within a reasonable time, and thus things are going to become more valuable. Community member Zeniz then asked whether or not we would be able to purchase larger SCU boxes with this new cargo refactor in order for us to be able to load things in them like armor and weapons for things like org events. I think this question is really good, and I really hope to see this myself, but unfortunately, it's not going to be something that comes in 318 because of the same reason I mentioned before.
It's the problem with this game is like it's just delayed for the last 10 years. It's been not good. It's really cool, but
because we can't use the tractor beams yet in safe zones because of the issues with them being used to kill players. And so when they resolve that issue with the eventual physical cargo lifts, then yes, we'll be able to buy bigger cargo boxes, which will save a lot of the organizers a lot of time. Alright, now let's get to the juicy bits. So if you guys don't know, right now in 317, if you blow up a ship and it's carrying cargo, it has a chance to drop its cargo. Unfortunately, traditionally up until now, what it's dropped is 1/8 SCU boxes, of which there can be many, and so unfortunately, because of the quantity of these boxes, they often just don't appear. They just vanish. And even if they are there in space, because there's no way for you to find them in the vastness of the black, it's pretty much like they're not even there, unless you blew up a ship in atmosphere, and even then, it's pretty difficult to find them on the surface of a moon or planet. In patch 318 though, all of this is finally going to change for the better. Instead of dropping 1/8 SCU boxes, we're finally going to have full SCU boxes come out of wrecks when you blow them up, making the act of loading and unloading cargo far less.
This game has like the closest to like expanse fighting that I've seen. That's really cool. Hang on.
1/8 SCU boxes, we're finally going to have full SCU boxes come out of wrecks when you blow them up, making the act of loading and unloading cargo far less painful. In addition to this, you're going to have a chance to get up to 95% of the cargo from the ship that explodes, with a random chance to go all the way down to 0%. CIG did say though that it would be closer to 45% on average. But the better news here is that when cargo drops out of a ship, they'll now be scannable by your ship's scanner, and they will pop up with their own new UI element that tells you what kind of cargo they are. Personally,
it's one of those things where it's like, why wasn't it? He might even be like literally just about to say this. Like, how is that not like?
I feel like this has been a feature that should have been introduced a long time ago, but finally we have a way to locate things that have dropped out of ships. This is going to be great not just for pirates, but for players who have maybe accidentally exploded and want to return to hopefully get back some of the cargo that they lost, and maybe even some items that they had put in their ship's inventory. But what's even a bigger deal than being able to scan down one SCU cargo box in space is the fact that in 318, we're going to finally have a feature that has been discussed for years, and that's soft death. In its full form, what their intention is for you to be able to target specific ship systems to disable a ship instead of blowing it up. Well, there isn't a way for them to get that in just yet. What they've instead decided to introduce is a chance, around 70% chance in fact, for your ship not to explode when you're defeated. Instead, what will happen is that your ship will become inoperable and you and your cargo will still be there. This gives you a chance to either be rescued.
Okay. So if you haven't played this game, what that means is you can literally just like pull up next to them and like you can jump off, like you can board.
Or to be boarded. This has left the community, including myself, with a number of questions and concerns about these new mechanics. Questions like whether or not the ship can still be blown up after it
Sounds so
reaches
fun.
0% hull and goes into its inoperable state. Because say it can, for example, and people don't know that the ship's been disabled, they might just continue to shoot it and then it will explode anyway. Or say, for example, you were flying in atmosphere and you were disabled. Will you just blow up once you hit the ground, or will it remain at 0% hull and you'll still be alive with the hull on the ground? And whether or not the ship's doors will be operable in this state, because if they're not, you won't be able to escape in something like, say, a Pisces if you were in a Carrack, or in your Merlin if you were in a Constellation. And then
Yeah,
will
that'd be so
disabled
cool.
ships slow down automatically? Because if they won't and they continue to travel in a straight line, disabled ships are going to be impossible to stop, to board, or salvage, given that we currently don't have any mechanics right now to restrict ship movement like ship tractor beams. Those aren't coming in 3.18. And if indeed there is no automatic ship slowdown after being disabled, how is this even a viable mechanic?
That's what I was
Everything's
talking
going to
about.
be moving. How are we going
With
to be
Elite Dangerous, there is no ship slowdown. So then you have to chase the ship down. Yeah, because it retains all of its momentum because it's space.
able to salvage or board anything if they're traveling at a kilometer a second? And then, is there any visual indication of a soft death? Like, is there some sort of UI response telling you that the ship has been disabled instead of destroyed? Or is there some sort of visual indication with special effects like smoke and sparks or something like that to let us know that the ship is in a down state? Personally, I think the answer to these questions is going to determine whether or not this new mechanic has a truly positive impact on our experience in Star Citizen. Personally, I think these concerns are rather obvious.
I just don't
and so
think that
hopefully
this is a
CIG has
good
already
space
thought them
game yet.
through and thought of solutions to
Right.
release with 3.18, and so we'll have a very complete and interesting mechanic to tide us over the holidays.
It's like a bunch
If
of
not,
cool
though,
mechanics
it may be
put
another
together.
swing and a miss, and it wouldn't be the first time that this has happened. I mean, if you've been around for a while, you'll know. Regardless of whether or not it's perfect, though, there are also still some concerns that this is going to raise the amount of pirating in Star Citizen. A lot of cargo haulers and generally
I like that.
non-combat
Pirating is
oriented
great.
players have concerns about an
You should
increased
be
level
scared.
of what they might feel is just griefing or
I mean, a
just
little bit.
general pirating, which is supported by gameplay systems. Unfortunately for that type of player, I do think that there is going to be an uptick in pirating, at least initially. Ultimately, there aren't that many new mechanics being introduced into the game to allow players to be restricted any more than they are right now. It's very easy to get away from a pirate right now who isn't organized, and it won't be any different in 3.18. The only difference is that there will likely be just more people trying, given that this mechanic incentivizes more people to try. But this was always going to happen. This was inevitable. Mechanics like these were always in the works from the beginning, and so we're now just getting closer to a more finished and complete picture of what Star Citizen will be like. Ultimately, I think that concerns are a little bit overblown, as they were for the new medical gameplay that was introduced a while back.
The other thing, like after playing this game for a little bit, is like the gameplay loops are not very like, put together yet. So I think like at least having, even if it's not perfect, like some kind of mechanic that allows for pirating. Well, now you're gonna get like people who are like pirating, of course, but if you have a big cargo ship where you spent like millions of credits, like, filling it up, and you're like gonna go sell somewhere, well, you might like now want to contact some guys who are like, hey, you come along with me, and if pirates attack, you get to keep whatever they have, or I'll even just pay you on top of that. And I think it could add in some like cool like social things, which is cool.
And the new death mechanics that were introduced. At first, people were really resentful for them to come into the game, and at this point I think people are just used to them and are still enjoying the experience, and it won't be much different in my opinion after this new mechanic is introduced. I think it's also important to consider the other benefits of this new mechanic, which are outside of encouraging just more pirating. For example, now if your ship is accidentally blown up by an NPC or by hitting a station, you have a chance to actually recover your gear. You can go back, or you might even still be alive, and you'll be able to be rescued by a friend and have your cargo moved. There are a lot of good things that can come from this, and so let's give it a chance and see what happens, and inevitably CIG is going to rebalance it to make it fun. Their objective is to make a fun experience, and it's just going to take time for them to do that. But what do you guys think? Did you guys think of any concerns that I didn't bring up here? And what do you think the answers to the questions I posed are? Do you think that they are valid questions? Please let me know. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I've been Morphologist. Hope to see you in the next one.
The concerns are valid. I think as far as like I don't really care that much about the cargo refactor stuff, but as far as like the piracy takes, we will throw this game in the rotation because it gets better all the time. I just don't have a very good ship.
Thank you to Squarespace for supporting
Oh yeah.
PBS.
Half of the universe is filled with expansionist alien civilizations, and it's only a matter of time before they reach us. Okay, that sounded a little sensationalist, but it's
What if humanity is among the first spacefaring civilizations? Let's find out what PBS.
also the claim of
Yes.
a recent astrophysics paper. Let's see how they came to that conclusion and whether we should take it seriously. We humans have been around for only a blink of an eye compared to the 13 billion years since the Big Bang. But even the current age of the universe is itself a blink of an eye compared to the amount
Yeah, I
of
think
time
it's been in development since like 2012 or something. So literally over a decade. Maybe even before that. Kickstarter date. Yeah. September 2012 announced. Oh, pre-production started in 2010. So 12 years. It's a long time.
to come. Stars will continue burning for another 100 trillion years, and the heat death of the universe is a googol years in the future. That's one with 100 zeros. From this point of view, we are living pretty much at the beginning of the universe. At the same time, when we look at the sky, we see stars, galaxies, but not a galactic empire in view. We see no evidence of life out there, which may mean that humanity is super early in the history of life in the universe. Which I guess is pretty cool if you think being first to a party is cool. But it's also weird. See, we have this thing called the Copernican principle, which states that we shouldn't expect to find ourselves in a particularly special place in the universe, named for Nicholas Copernicus, who showed that the Earth is not the center of the universe as had previously been thought. We are in fact on a typical planet orbiting a typical star in a typical galaxy. But in principle, you can extend this principle to time. If life can appear for trillions of years, then it's suspicious that we find ourselves in the first billions. Of course, the Copernican principle has to compete with the anthropic principle, which states that we can only find ourselves at a location in the universe capable of forming and supporting observers. That's why it's not surprising that we are on a planet at all, rather than floating in a more typical environment, the freezing void between the galaxies. So perhaps there's also an anthropic reason for us to find ourselves at the beginning of time. Maybe the future history of the universe isn't as hospitable to life after all. This may sound like a lot of speculation. I mean, how can we know what the future history of the universe will be? Well, believe it or not, it is possible to say something about the earliness
Yeah.
of humanity and the future of life
it's like something I've been so interested in recently, especially with like all the UAP stuff. And we might get to it, but like there's like Harvard scientists right now who are actually like one of them, you can Google him, Avi Loeb, Loeb, I think is his last name, Aviloeb. But they're like actually talking about how there's like some validity and they want to gather data. So they're like putting out replicatable observatories potentially globally to try and like capture real UAP data, which is like pretty interesting.
Just based on our
We might listen to some interviews with him because it's really crazy.
arrival date and the apparent emptiness of the sky. And today we're going to talk about a study that tries to do exactly that. To hear more about the anthropic and Copernican principles and how we can use them to calculate other surprising things about the universe, including our expiry date, check out our video on the Doomsday Argument. But today we're looking at the new paper by Robin Hanson, Daniel Martin, Calvin McCarter, and Jonathan Paulson. First, these researchers asked the question, how early is humanity? They try to answer it by building a simple model of the emergence and spread of intelligent life in our universe. And then they use that answer to propose something pretty wild. A proposal that gives the model its name, the Grabby Aliens model. But you'll have to wait to hear what that
Ew.
proposal actually is. First up, how do you determine humanity's earliness? Well, you start with a function called the appearance rate, which tells us how many intelligent civilizations are evolving from primordial goop at a given cosmic time. Using the appearance rate along with our current date, we can work out our civilization's birth rank. Of all the civilizations that will ever exist, what proportion came before us? If most have already appeared, then we are late and we have a high birth rank. While if most are still to come, then we're early with a low birth rank. To figure out this appearance rate function, the researchers start with what we know about when habitable worlds formed in the past or when they will form in the future. It turns out that most habitable stars are formed in a pretty short period of cosmic history. In the first couple of billion years, the universe didn't contain enough heavy elements for rocky planets to form. And around 20 billion years in the future, there won't be enough interstellar material left to form.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Like, isn't it a sample size of 1? But this makes sense.
New stars. Habitable star formation will peak at around 15 billion years, so not so far away from our current date. There are a bunch of other factors that cause the peak, which we go into our episode on galactic habitable zones. Once a habitable star along with its habitable planets have formed, life needs time to evolve. And it needs a lot of time. We humans only appeared 4 and a bit billion years after our planet formed. But how long does it take on average throughout the cosmos? To answer this, the researchers use the hard steps model. To get from primordial goop to intelligent life, you need a sequence of fluke events. On Earth, that involved the first formation of self-replicating cells, the evolution of complex eukaryote cells, then multicellular organisms, then photosynthesis, sexual reproduction, developing giant brains, and various civilization and technological steps. All of these events are possible hard steps, extremely unlikely per year.
Another thing I'm really interested in that we'll get into is like the Fermi paradox, if you know what that is. Each of these is also potentially a barrier. The Fermi paradox is like, if the universe is this big, like why don't we see like aliens, basically, right? And the solutions are like, well, the universe is empty because, maybe cell replication is really hard, it doesn't happen. Or maybe it's because we live in a giant zoo. Or maybe it's because we live in a giant simulation. There's just like a million answers for like why we don't see that, but I just think the question is really interesting.
but will eventually happen after waiting a very long time. The number of hard steps is a big deciding factor in how fast the universe can spawn intelligent life. If there are few hard steps, then civilizations emerge soon after their stars are formed. If there are many hard steps, it takes much longer. If we assume that humanity was not particularly lucky, in the sense that we didn't blast through many more hard steps than chance would normally predict, then it's possible to crudely estimate the number of hard steps that it typically takes to produce intelligent life, like us. The author's best guess is between 4 and 8, admittedly with some major assumptions. It should also be noted that the hard steps model is simplistic. For example, some steps may be easy, but may take a long time anyway, like due to the slow but steady build-up of biological complexity. Still, the hard steps model lets us write down a mathematical function for the appearance rate of life that depends on a single parameter, the number of hard steps. It also lets us say something about humanity's earliness based on the typical number of hard steps.
Yeah, that's true. Like,
the more steps,
it's like I don't know, like the theory that like there's multiple universes based on like different decisions. Nick, is that really going to be your first thing in the chat? Don't make me ban you.
steps there are in the typical
This is an authoritarian chat in here.
evolutionary pathway, the earlier humanity must be. Another important question is, what's the time limit for completing these steps? How long do these habitable planets
Right.
remain habitable?
But
It's
no, like
estimated that
my
the Earth
favorite
will only-
my favorite solution. You're right. What else did I expect? Oh man. But my favorite thing is like, and I think the most likely thing is, it's just really hard to like do the multicellular thing. So maybe maybe the universe is just full of like microbes and shit, and we got really lucky.
only be habitable for another 1 billion years or so, after which the sun will be too hot for liquid water to exist on the surface of the planet. So Earth will have
Nick, you want to
5
play Call of
billion
Duty later?
habitable years in total. If all habitable planets only last this long, then new civilizations would mostly stop appearing 5 billion years after the peak of habitable star formation, which, if you remember, is 20 billion years away. In this case, it seems like we're a little bit early. However, there's one big consideration that totally changes this picture. There might be other habitable planets that last a lot longer than the Earth. M-type stars, also known as red dwarfs, can live for thousands of times longer than our Sun, meaning they could have planets that remain habitable for trillions of years. If it's possible for life to evolve on these planets, then
Yeah. And free after 5. Okay, just shoot me a text and we'll play. You know how you know how to do it. What if they've been told not to? Yeah, so there's two things that I've read about that. Is one is the zoo hypothesis, where either they found us early on, or they like seeded Earth with life, and now we're just like a either an observation, like they're observing us, or you know, it's an experiment. We are an experiment. That one's fucking creepy. Or it's like more like Star Trek, like Prime Directive type deal, where it's like, well, we can't really interact with them until they get to, well, I don't know, interstellar travel, or I don't know, some arbitrary technological level. I don't know. Those are interesting. I'd much rather that than like the zoo, like the real zoo, where it's like we're an experiment or something. That doesn't seem great.
new civilizations could continue to emerge for trillions of years in the future. In this case, we are very early. The experts are split on whether red dwarfs are habitable. Since they're very dim, orbiting planets need to be very close to the star in order to have liquid water, which may be necessary for life. But planets closer to their star are more likely to be tidally locked. This can cause erratic climates and make any potential inhabitants vulnerable to solar flares.
There's a book that I read. It's like 100 solutions to the Fermi paradox. There's like, I'm sure there's more than that, but it was a wild read.
The authors of this paper argue that life could well evolve on red dwarf planets. After all, why should all life have the same requirements as Earth life? But this isn't the
True.
scientific consensus, and notably these researchers are not planetary scientists nor astrobiologists. So, there are two main deciding factors of our birth rank: the number of hard steps and the maximum lifetime of habitable planets. By throwing many combinations of these two parameters into their model, the researchers generated this diagram. Let's talk through it. Each point on this
Pretty.
surface represents a choice of a hard step number and a maximum planet lifetime. And the colour of that point tells you your birth rank. Cold colours means we are typical, and hot colours means we're early. If only short-lived planets like the Earth are habitable, and there are few hard steps, then we were born at a pretty typical period of the cosmos. About 25% of civilizations were born before us. On the other hand, if red dwarfs are habitable, but it's easy for life to evolve, then we are in something like the first 0.1% of civilizations.
That would be pretty
Finally,
lucky.
If there are both long-lived habitable planets around red dwarfs, and there are many hard steps, then virtually all civilizations will result from very drawn-out evolutionary processes trillions of years in the future. There will be a billion times more civilizations born after us than before us. Okay, now we get to the wild
It
proposals
hurts
of
my
this
brain,
paper.
dude.
The researchers asked the question: if red dwarfs are habitable and there are many hard steps, is there any other way to explain our apparent earliness besides extreme chance? The idea is to come up with some plausible scenario that limits
It's
the
just a
number of
perfect
possible
environment.
future civilizations,
Maybe?
even in the case that we should expect them based on the emergence of habitable worlds and the hard steps model. The so-called grabby aliens model hypothesizes the existence of a cosmic deadline for the birth of new civilizations, some catastrophic event that will happen one day in the future that prevents any new intelligent life from emerging. But what could cause such a deadline? Well, we could, and by we, I mean all civilizations that emerge up to that deadline. The model claims that at some point in the future, all habitable planets will be occupied by rapidly expanding alien civilizations. No new life has a chance to evolve because every planet is already occupied by spacefaring advanced life. To reach this conclusion, the model assumes that
It's just a big game of Stellaris. Once everything's claimed. But that's the thing, is like apparently nothing is claimed,
every
which is
intelligent
like the weird
civilization
part.
has some chance of becoming a grabby civilization. A civilization that expands in every direction through space at close to the speed of light, making visible changes wherever they go, and that they stick around for a long time. Well, when we look at life on Earth, it seems that life has a common tendency to aggressively expand into new territories and niches. When thinking about our own society today, some might be skeptical that we're going to be able to expand through the cosmos at close to the speed of light anytime soon. But even if it takes us 1,000,000 years to work out how to expand into space and another 1,000,000 to cross the galaxy at 10% light speed, this delay will have basically no effect on cosmological timescales. The authors needed to tune the parameters of their model to cut out just the right number of future births of new civilizations to give us a typical run-of-the-mill birth rank. If grabby civilizations aren't common enough, they won't prevent enough future births to make us typical rather than early. But if they're too common, then we couldn't have evolved in the first place, as Earth would already have been colonized. That actually allows us to estimate the number of civilizations needed to make sure that humanity isn't too special by being too early. But for that, we also need to estimate the speed of grabby expansion. We do that with a
Oh
single
no, I
surprisingly
hope it's not
useful
Mass
bit of
Effect.
information.
I hope we don't live
The
in
fact
that universe.
we haven't yet seen any evidence of aliens through our telescopes.
No,
Counterintuitively, this
No.
fact implies that
do not put that on us, Dusk. If you like Mass Effect, and you haven't read this book yet, you should read. There's a book called The Forest. It's very interesting.
gravity expansion is incredibly fast. Around
Yeah, it's like a sci-fi book. Basically, I won't like spoil it, but the premise is that the universe is a dark forest. And it's dark because there are civilizations that will hunt down and kill civilizations that are too loud.
a third of the speed of light. How does this follow? Well, basically, if we could see grabby aliens in our skies, then aliens must be moving slowly since they are in our neighborhood but haven't reached us yet. Instead, if we assume that they move very fast, then we
think
wouldn't
it's the
see them
forest.
until they basically arrive on Earth. The emptiness of our skies and the constraint of making us
Might be the
typical
dark
observers
forest.
is enough to determine all of the parameters
Dark
of the
forest.
model. The researchers then used the model to run a simulation of the emergence of intelligent
Yeah,
civilizations
the dark
over time,
forest.
in which some civilizations become grabby and spread through the universe, ending
It's
with
by
a universe totally full
the
of
same
life.
author who did Three
The
Body
simulation
Problem.
tells us all sorts of weird and surprising things about how space is
If
populated.
you've heard of that, there's like an
At least
Amazon series
given
I
the
think
assumptions
coming
of
out
the
about
model.
it.
It tells us that the colonization of the universe has already begun. In fact, around half of the volume of the universe is currently colonized. It predicts that only
What?
1 in 1,000 intelligent civilizations eventually become spacefaring and spread through the cosmos. This could be because most civilizations destroy themselves before they get the chance, or choose not to take to the skies. And finally, it tells us roughly when we should expect to meet those grabby aliens. It gives us a best guess waiting time of around 500 million years. Don't expect to meet aliens anytime soon, even if they do
That's
fill
a long
half of
time.
the universe. So I guess they're just not in the Milky Way yet. I'm not going to say whether the conclusions of this paper are right. Remember, this is a model, and its conclusions are only as good as the assumptions behind the model. But this paper is a nice example of how you can figure out a lot given very little. In this case, given literally nothing, at least in terms of our observation of the existence of other civilizations. But if these authors are right, and that's a big, big if, then it may be that our empty sky is one piece of evidence for a universe filled with aliens rushing in to grab this rare remaining patch of space-time.
Thank you to Squarespace for supporting PBS.
Squarespace is a website building
the
and
rest
hosting
of this
company.
is-
With Squarespace, you can
Does
connect with your
Squarespace
audience
have-
and generate revenue through gated members-only content. Users
No,
can manage
but that was interesting. It's like people too good with math, man. Scientists have a lot of
The
time to
limited
do
edition 12,023 Kurzgesagt calendar
that. I
is
saw this
here.
had like 5
Every
million
purchase
views.
enables us to make videos free for everyone. So get one for yourself or a loved one and be a sponsor of the following video. Eternal gratitude from us and
Yeah,
all
it's
the
like
verbs
almost a
around the world.
horror book.
Here in the Kurzgesagt labs, we test very important
But so is
ideas
Three Body
to see
Problem.
what happens when you blow things up or play with
The Three Body Problem? I don't know.
black holes. Many of you suggested that we look into an idea that sounds reasonable. Shooting nuclear waste into space. It's one of those concepts that seems like an easy fix for one of the main problems with nuclear energy. But it turns out this idea is not just bad, but horribly bad. And it gets worse the longer you think about it.
Yeah, I don't know why. I was gonna say, I hope he's not gonna say it's a good idea.
Why is that?
It's like people being like, well, why don't we just put all of our trash into like a volcano? It's like, yeah, Just think about that for a while. Think about how much trash we have.
What is nuclear waste? Nuclear waste is a fuzzy term and comes in categories which vary from country to country. But in general, there are 3 broad levels. 90% is low-level nuclear waste, tools, gloves, or trash used at a nuclear facility that could be weakly contaminated with some short-lived radioactivity. This stuff is generally safe for normal disposal. 7% is intermediate-level nuclear waste, mostly materials that have been in close proximity to a reactor core long enough to become dangerously radioactive. With proper handling, it's either safely buried or melted down and mixed into glass or concrete and stored deep underground. So 97% of nuclear waste is similar to toxic byproducts from other industries.
You think so? I like nuclear power. I think it's cool. I think like with every tech, like, you know, you work out the problems. Like, I think China's building like molten salt reactors now that put out way less nuclear waste. I think a few other countries have like got them on the books. Cause yeah, I mean people got scared out of him with like what he's talking about. Like, what do you do with all the nuclear waste? It lasts for a long time, but the volume of it is not good. It is wild to me that like people were like, yeah, but what about the nuclear waste? Instead, let's just burn all this stuff directly into the air. It's like, oh, I don't know if that's better.
Not great, not terrible.
Actually, it's not better. I'd rather have to deal with the nuclear waste. I'm fine with that. Figure out solutions.
We can handle it. The remaining 3% is where our problems begin. High-level nuclear waste is very concentrated.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you compare it to like all the people who die of like, yeah, pollution and like close proximity to like coal power plants, yeah, it's clearly better.
Fuel taken out of a reactor core. Formerly uranium, it's now made of various dangerous and often highly radioactive elements. As a bonus, it's also incredibly hot and not easy to handle at all. This is what we want to shoot into space. All in all, around 440 active nuclear reactors create about 11,000 tons of high-level nuclear waste each year. Since 1954, we've accumulated 400,000 tons of dangerous radioactive waste. Most countries are dealing with it by not dealing with it and kicking the can towards the future. Great, so let's launch it into space. According to scientists, space is big, and nobody lives there, so it seems perfect for yeeting away this mess. There are a few tiny problems though. Problem 1, stuff ain't cheap.
Yeah.
Even though spaceflight is getting more affordable, it's still extremely expensive. Just to get something into low Earth orbit costs on average about $4,000 per kilogram. Putting that into perspective, it costs about $1,600 to mine, separate and fabricate 1 kilogram of nuclear fuel.
Yeah,
So
underground
launching
way
waste
better.
into space has suddenly made nuclear fuel for reactors way more expensive and greatly increased the cost of the electricity they produce. To launch 1 reactor's
I
worth
remember
of nuclear
I was
waste
reading
would cost
something
at least
about like somebody
$100
wanted
million
to,
per year.
or like some startup
To deal
here
with
in the
all the
US wanted to like
440
do
operational nuclear
take nuclear waste and then make it into like long-term battery storage. Like it couldn't hold a ton of power, but like, you know, enough for like watch batteries, small like low power items, calculators, like things like that. Like coin battery type stuff.
power plants high-level nuclear waste.
And like the idea was to like make crystals out of the, like crystallize the nuclear material. I don't know. It was above my head, but it sounded interesting.
Would cost some $44 billion per year for space launch before packaging, transport and security costs are added. Okay, let's pretend we don't care. Currently, we couldn't shoot all the nuclear waste into space even if we wanted to. There just aren't enough rockets. In 2021, we saw a record 135 launches into space. If we repurposed each of those rockets and filled them all with nuclear waste, the total amount that could be lifted into a low Earth orbit, which is the closest orbit above the atmosphere, is nearly 800 tons. We'd need at least 14 times more rockets to handle just today's nuclear waste, let alone get rid of the hundreds of thousands of tons in temporary storage. We would need to create entire new space industries to keep up with the demand for giant, toxic space trash trucks.
Which, like, you're burning fuel and releasing greenhouse gases into the environment to, like, launch the rockets too.
And it gets worse. Problem 2, space is hard. We only made the calculation for low Earth orbit, where we send most of our rockets and satellites. Littering the space around Earth with thousands of casks of spent nuclear fuel would be a nightmare for space junk management and satellite collision avoidance. Worse still, at this altitude, there's still a little bit of atmosphere causing a tiny bit of drag, so we might have nuclear waste raining down
Just
from space
rain,
within
son.
just a few
Yeah.
years. Experts would call this
Totally
a
fine.
huge problem. Clearly, we have to launch our waste further. If we wanted to send it to, perhaps, the moon, we either need way more rockets or we need to build much bigger ones, making it even more expensive. A single Saturn V, the rocket used by the Apollo program, which cost around $1.5 billion adjusted for inflation per launch, could get about 43.5 tons from the Earth to the moon. So we'd need about 260 Saturn V rocket launches every year. And of course, using the moon as target practice for nuclear waste-tipped rockets kind of makes a huge mess. So maybe don't aim for anything. Space is empty. Do we really need a target?
I think
Shooting-
I think he entertains it because this guy is, like, you know, he's got 20 million subscribers. I'm sure he sees it in the comments constantly. Right? Like, people who are like, "We'll just yeet it into the sun, man. We got the technology." He's, like, creating a video to, like, point to be like, no.
Waste
I
in
don't know,
any
maybe
random direction is, you guessed it, also a bad
It's the only
idea.
reason I
Orbits
can think
are
of to
loops, which
entertain
means
such
they
an
have a
awful
tendency
idea.
to come back to where they started. Put enough in the sky in random directions, and you'll get one back eventually. So we'd want to launch our nuclear waste deep into space, which means we need even bigger rockets that would be even more expensive.
Just
Not
make
that we would be
yeah.
completely safe
It's
then.
it's almost upsetting that, like, anybody thought that, like, think for more than, like, 60 seconds about it.
Earth might run into these interplanetary caskets at some time in the far future and experience a pretty meteor shower made from radioactive.
Honestly, just one failed launch, right? You have a bunch of nuclear waste sitting on a rocket in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and that shit goes up. That's reason enough not to ever do this.
Dust. Okay, how about we shoot it
Yeah,
into the sun?
I love nuclear rain.
Ironically, the sun is pretty hard to hit.
What's up? What's
While
fresh?
the sun has very strong gravity, everything on Earth is moving with respect to the sun, including the rockets that we launch, meaning a rocket would have to cancel out all the orbital motion it has around the sun so it can stop orbiting and fall in. Because of this, it's actually easier to launch a rocket entirely out of the solar system than it is to launch it into the sun. But to
Huh.
do either of these things, we
That's
need
interesting.
even
I
bigger
didn't know that.
rockets, probably the biggest we've ever built. Nothing works. The thing is, it gets even worse.
How?
Problem 3, rockets go brrr.
Oh yeah.
Rocket engineering has taken huge steps since the Apollo era. We've made them relatively safe. We've mostly replaced the toxic explosive cancer fuels of the past decades with much saner mixes of liquid oxygen and hydrogen or kerosene. The newest designs even land themselves so that they can be reused. And yet, out of the 146 launches in 2021, there were 11 failures, which means
Yeah.
that a sizable number of our rockets carrying high-level radioactive waste would be exploding on the launch pad, or in the worst case, disassembling at high altitude or crashing from hypersonic speeds. Each failure would be at least equivalent to a mini Chernobyl, but instead of being contained under a slab of concrete, spread throughout the atmosphere. Radioactive particles could make their way to faraway places by riding on the winds. Most would fall into the ocean, but some would land on the inhabited parts of the world. They could cover farmlands and get concentrated into our food or enter our water supply, which is, well, bad. Imagine regular large-scale nuclear disasters happening. People wouldn't be happy. Conclusion and opinion part. Nuclear waste is scary, but the fear of it and horrible ideas like shooting it into space reveals how
That's
bad
about
we
as
are
bad as
at
it-
understanding risk. Because
It's almost as bad as it gets. Just shy of, like, you know, total nuclear exchange.
the largest amounts of radioactive elements like uranium and radon are actually released by coal. Burning millions of tons of coal each year leaves ash as a waste product that includes about 36,000 tons of radioactive materials.
Oh, that seems
Less
really bad.
radioactive than high-level nuclear waste, but there's also a lot more of it, and it's handled way less carefully. Some of this ash is caught by filters, but most is simply pushed back into leaky mines, shoved into piles exposed to the wind, or poured into ponds that regularly spill into rivers and lakes.
Yikes.
Living within 1.6 kilometers of an ash pile increases your cancer risk up to 2,000 times over the acceptable limit.
Holy shit.
And this is on top of other toxic chemicals like heavy metals and, of course, their massive CO2 emissions. And yet, while nuclear energy is flawed and its current form may only be a transitory technology, nuclear power plants are a harder sell than coal. Nuclear waste and the lack of willingness to deal with it are a real issue. It's not insurmountable, though. There are good methods to handle it, like burying it deep underground or reprocessing some of it into new fuel. But however we ultimately deal with this issue, we hope one thing is clear. Shooting nuclear waste into space is one of the worst ideas ever.
Yeah.
Researching
Think so.
this crazy thing, conducting all of these important tests, and of course, creating this video took us around 2,000 hours, which is insane for a
Oh my
YouTube video.
God.
And we couldn't do it without you. If you like what you just
2,000
saw,
hours?
you can continue your science
Which
journey
is-
with one of
it's
our
high
products.
quality,
They're true
you know,
pieces of
animation
quartz
and
results
stuff, I
you can take
guess.
home and touch. And they're the best way to support this channel, like our limited edition Human Era Calendar that will bring you a whole year of joy. Learn more about the world with our carefully researched infographic
Okay.
posters, get our habit and gratitude journals to improve your life with
My brain
science,
is broken.
or update your wardrobe with our
Let's just
new
play
hoodie
some Call of
editions.
Duty, alright?
If your room is in need of a literal glow-up, get one of these posters. We've also got notebooks, plushes, mugs, and more. All designed with love and produced with care by us at Kurzgesagt. And if you sign up to our newsletter, we'll keep you up to date on everything happening in the Kurzgesagt universe. Thank you so much for
Kurzgesagt.
your support.
Good video. I don't know why you needed to make the video, but good video. Okay, hopefully this goes better than last time. Nuclear transport containers. Yeah, they have a pretty good record. That's the word. Actually, has there been? I don't think so. Ooh. Ooh. Well, maybe the transport containers never fail, but it doesn't look great either. April 2021. One tank leaking, potentially into the Columbia River. Yikes. But look, like, I don't know. It's about cost-benefit analysis. Not the transport containers, but the temporary storage containers have leaked. It looks like. But again, we're talking about like we're talking about like a couple leaks ever that are potentially cleanupable as long as they're caught and monitored, versus like burning coal, which, you know, as he pointed out, like, you know, releases 36 tons of radioactive particles into the air anyway, on top of all the other terrible shit. So even with that, I mean, there's still an argument to be made, I think. Still a fan of nuclear energy. I'm with you. I don't know what I was working on. Oh yeah. RPK. What do I need to do? Oh, just get this to level 16. That is not good ping. This is a problem I have living here in Durango, is like I have a gigabit connection, but my ping is always like not that great. I'm just really far from the Denver servers.
Our UAV is orbiting the area.
I don't know if you ever had that issue. Oh, I should probably edit my
Hostile
title.
UAV in the area. Hostile gunship overhead. Hostile mortar strike near your position. Friendly VTOL entering this sector. Friendly UAV on station. Hostile juggernaut entering the AO. Enemy UAV active. Friendly cruise missile approaching
Atlanta.
target.
Yeah, dude. Everybody I know on the East Coast, the East Coast, has a good time.
Enemy UAV overhead. Invasion.
And it sucks because, like, I grew up in the Midwest, so a lot of my friends, they're either on like East Coast servers or,
Helo is inbound.
you know, Central servers if they're available.
Hostile Wilson deployed.
Oh, that's a RPK right
Hostile
there.
SAE near your position.
Grab that.
Over halfway to mission. Friendly
Ah.
UAV online. Friendly UAV on station. The enemy's falling back. Keep that up.
Nope.
Friendly airstrike on the way. Our counter UAV is active.
Got him! You did buy a new router. Yeah, I wonder if it's just because like
Friendly SAE on the way.
like
Friendly counter
other
UAV
people in the
ready
house
for
streaming, or
online.
like I don't know. Never stuck a guy in a juggernaut suit before. That was wild.
We're getting overrun. Fall back. UAV active.
You know what I also need to do is I think I just need to play smaller games on stream. So I'm gonna finish this and then maybe play like Hardpoint or something. Cause trying to load in all these players. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. What? It's using that guy as a body shield. Sure, blame me. I'm not blaming you. Because I'm also streaming other stuff.
Only a few enemy remain. Take them out. Our UAV is orbiting the area.
It's a warm-up game, okay? Don't judge me.
Hostile gunship entering the AO. Hostile mortar strike incoming.
Hey man, I was just trying to get inside. Yeah, it's not my camera though. Like, isn't that weird?
Friendly cruise missile deployed. Enemy UAV overhead. Hostile UAV. Friendly SAE launched. Friendly UAV on station. Friendly VSO inbound. Chopper gunner servicing targets.
Switch to balanced. See if that helps.
Friendly
Looks a
counter
little
UAV
bit better, I
on
feel like.
station.
No, well, so I don't notice on my game, but if I look over at you guys in Streamlabs, I can see the lag in Streamlabs. Which I presume is what you guys see. But that's okay. I changed the setting here. And we're gonna play a smaller game mode and we'll see how that goes. It already seems a little snappier. I don't know why. I think I literally just changed it to balanced. Now it's fine. I had it on recommended. Oh, yeah. But still. Look, hang on. In theory, it shouldn't be using all my VRAM even. So, don't know. Tis what it is. Yeah, it's a mystery. I don't know what the deal is. Did I not? I swear I selected quick play.
We have the lead.
Threw me into another invasion game, but it seems to be doing better though, so
We've secured the
I'm
lead.
gonna let it rock. Oh, hi. Oh, I don't have a sidearm. That is a good question. I don't know what encoder I'm using. I assume it's my CPU because my bottleneck is my GPU for games. And I have like a pretty good Ryzen processor. I think it's a 5800X.
The enemy has the lead.
Ryzen 7 5800X, I think. So that is probably what I'm doing the encoding on if I had to like think back to what I did. GPU is 3070.
The enemy is falling back. Don't let up. Switching mags.
So I shouldn't, yeah. I should be able to run this max settings. Well, you know, bandwidth limited. My bandwidth should be the bottleneck, I guess, is like what I'm saying.
We've lost the lead. Friendly cruise missile inbound. We've secured the lead. Cold-blooded activated. The enemy has the lead. Enemy UAV over. Enemy UAV active. We've lost the lead. Hostile UAV in the area. We have the lead.
Got him.
The enemy has the lead.
That's friendly.
Change your max. Contact.
Woo.
Throwing flash grenade! Got host!
Changing mags.
I thought I saw somebody shooting from up there. There we go.
Friendly vehicles are inbound.
To my GP. Yeah, I will, I'll try that out. See if that does anything.
UAV standing by.
Yeah, I learned that last time. Don't change anything with the GPU while I'm streaming. It ended the stream last time.
Copy. UAV orbiting the AO. Recon is online. We're getting overrun. Fall back.
Hey.
Enemy UAV overhead. Ghost online. Our UAV is orbiting the area. The UAV online. UAV in the area.
Took out their UAV.
That's what I was looking for. This guy. Swoop.
Took out their counter UAV.
Enemy UAV overhead.
I'm reloading.
Oh, come on.
Hostile SAE incoming.
I just want to unlock this RPK, dude.
The enemy is halfway to mission complete. Friendly hostile UAV
Overall,
in the area.
if
Enemy UAV
I think it's a good game because
Round
it's
one,
like
reinforcements
it's
inbound.
better. Like I'm more of like a Battlefield player anyway, and it feels a little more like that.
Hostile UAV in the area.
What I don't like about it is I don't necessarily like the gun unlock system because it like forces you to play with a bunch of different guns, but I can see how like that is actually a positive. I don't know. It's the best Call of Duty they've put out since, I don't know, honestly in a long time.
Hostile SAE near your position.
The kill streaks feel good. The gunplay feels pretty good.
Compromised. Fall back.
It's like better than you can say for quite a few. Can I get up? Quite a few of the more recent Call of Duties for sure. Oh, there is more stairs.
Friendly stealth bomber entering the AO. Our UAV is orbiting the area.
Mission. Target mark.
Copy that. Mortar strike inbound now. Good effect on target. Enemy UAV overhead. We're advancing. Maintain pressure.
Oh, I got it. Oh my goodness. Free kill streak. Not bad either.
Cargo helo is en route to the
Requesting
AO.
closer. Target mark.
Sparrow 6 flight inbound for SAE. Enemy UAV active.
Loading fresh mag.
Grenade.
Friendly VTOL on station. Hostile UAV in the area.
Am I actually gonna get all three of these kill streaks? Oh my god.
I'm reloading.
That was dirty, dude. It's, how do I... Oh, rotate.
The enemy is close to securing victories. Heavy armor supplies are inbound.
It's just...
Requesting air
Yeah.
support.
This is Vulture
cares?
6-1. Bombing run is inbound. Enemy UAV active.
I just don't want to be outside while that happens. Oh,
Friendly UAV online.
nice.
Good hit. Friendly more strike on the way.
guy.
Target.
Oh man.
Friendly UAV on station. Enemy UAV overhead. Enemy UAV active. Cargo vessel has entered the airspace. Enemy UAV overhead.
Switching max.
Okay. Sneaky boy.
Secure the perimeter.
Oh no, I'm trying to level this up.
Hostile UAV in the area. The enemy is close to victory. Stop them. Hostile VSOL in the area. Counter UAV. Hostiles launched an FAE. Hostiles launched a cruise missile. Hostile mortar strikes in the area.
See, that feels like Battlefield right there. Oh my god.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Not that part.
Hostile Wilson is
That part did not feel like Battlefield. I will say this map blows, dude.
Hostile counter UAV overhead. Mission failed.
Now we're gonna play a
Return to
real
base.
game mode. Yeah. I think the big maps are like, because I love playing big maps. But like, I think that they need work. Passed off 545. Cancel. There we go. The customization though is really good. Like they have like, you know, different platforms. Like I spent the time to unlock this basically like the MP5. But you can like, you know, click on this and you need to get the 5.56 to level 16, so that's this guy. And for this guy I need 7.62. So it makes you play the entire branch, but then on top of that unlock all the like attachments. Or even just like category, like you can't even put an optic on until level 6. You can edit in game though, which is pretty cool.
HQ located. Get moving. HQ is online. Capture the objective. Headquarters. The enemy securing the headquarters.
I heard him. I heard him.
Enemy inside objective. Enemies near HQ. Secure the area. Enemies on the objective.
Now that's something from Call of Duty that I don't like. It's the drop shotting.
We've lost the lead.
Stun grenade out!
Throwing flash grenade! Visual on the enemy! Switching max!
Stand by. We're on the objective. Securing now. Stand by for next location.
Activating drill charge!
UAV ready for tasking. Locating next new HQ located. Move to the objective.
I am with you.
This map is pretty good. I like this map.
Doors online.
Ah.
Secure the objective. The enemy securing the headquarters. Our UAV cold-blooded online. Enemy inside the perimeter. Secure the HQ.
You're gonna get clapped up there.
You've got enemy near the HQ. Hostile UAV in the
Changing
area.
back!
We're capturing the HQ. Set security.
Cover deployed! Setting Claymore! Enemy spotted!
Switching max!
We've taken the lead. Enemy inside the perimeter. Secure headquarters is being captured.
Ah,
Got your cover!
The enemy
man, they were all over there.
deploying reinforcements.
Nice, nice. Can we get this cap?
Confirming next HQ. Get next objective located. Move to secure.
Semtex!
Oh shit.
Requesting
Oh
recon
shit, I have a
cover.
UAV.
Copy. UAV is on station. Recon online.
Grenade! Ah!
That's so dumb.
HQ is active. Get it secure. We're securing the headquarters.
Be advised, UAV is exiting the AO.
Flash incoming!
You've got enemy near the HQ. Secure the perimeter.
Reloaded!
UAV ready to
Changing
deploy.
max!
Enemies near
Dropping
HQ.
ammo here.
Secure the area.
Standing by.
To me, motherfuckers. Oh,
The enemy is capturing
Oh.
our headquarters. We lost the HQ. Reinforcements inbound.
Copy. UAV is on
They really catch one out here. No?
Headquarters relocate. Next HQ confirmed. Push to that location. Enemy UAV active.
Be advised,
I need a sidearm.
CAO.
Hostile care package in the area. HQ is online. Capture the objective. Securing the objective now. You've got enemy near the HQ. Secure the perimeter. We're capturing the HQ. Set security.
Changing mag!
Enemies deployed a bomb drone. You're up. Stay sharp. Secure the air. Hostile UAV in the air.
No, I hit the wrong button. Fuck.
Enemy inside the perimeter. We're losing our headquarters.
I went to crouch and I hit my munitions box.
Our
Unbelievable.
headquarters is being captured. We lost control of the HQ. Friendly UAV online.
Loading!
Stand by. UHQ locate. Enemy UAV overhead.
Changing mag! Activating drill charge!
Friendly UAV on station.
Where did that? Oh,
Get it secure. We're
What?
securing the headquarters.
wow, that's a good throw. Respect, honestly. I'm never gonna make it to the HQ.
Enemy is near HQ. Secure the air. The enemy is capturing our headquarters.
Ugh.
We lost the HQ. Reinforcements inbound. Our UAV is orbiting the area.
We are whooping them though, so. It's all good.
Headquarters relocating. Stand by. Next objective located. Move to secure. Friendly UAV online.
Switching mags!
Sweet baby Jesus.
Headquarters online.
Oh,
UAV
two of
on
them.
station.
I had a flash. What was I doing?
Securing
But I
the
used it.
objective now. No enemy near the HQ. Secure the perimeter.
Throwing flash grenade!
On your six.
Throwing drill charge! Tossing a decoy! South! Loading! Changing mags!
We've got him on the run. Keep it up.
Never used that shotgun. What is that?
Covering your...
These guys can't catch a break.
All saber. Mission accomplished.
Nice. I'm gonna grab a drink of water real quick. I'll be right back. The Lockwood 300. Now that sounds like a gun. I haven't used shotguns. Maybe I'll make a shotgun class. I heard the Bryson is good. So we'll try that. Want, probably fast hands, right? Yeah. Deadeye. We'll do like a SMG. Alright, this map's like love it or hate it, I feel like.
Domination. Securing Alpha. Secure Bravo. Alpha secure. Bravo secure. We've secured the lead. Get on ammo.
I didn't know you'd seen me.
Our UAV is orbiting the area.
Throwing flash grenade! Switching mags!
Enemy is taking Bravo. Two objectives secure. The enemy took Bravo. Hostile UAV in the area. Enemy UAV overhead. Securing Charlie.
I gotta use my sub on this.
Hostile UAV in the area. We control Charlie.
Reloading!
Be active. Enemy is securing Alpha.
See, this map is awful when people camp, but it's fun when you get like people running around.
Charlie. We control two objectives.
But obviously, one of those happens more than the other.
Picked up their sniper.
We are taking Bravo.
Loading!
The enemy controls two objectives. Push the offense. Objective Alpha secure. Enemy counter UAV is active. Hostile VTOL overhead.
Oh
Hostile
no.
UAV in the area. We are losing Charlie. Enemy is taking Charlie. The enemy took Charlie. Left hand's online. Enemy UAV active.
On ammo. Low on ammo. Enemy counter
Enemy
UAV.
has captured two objectives.
Enemy
Move
counter.
Wow. Am I this bad at this game? I think so. I think also my team is. Oh, we're one short.
Visual on the enemy. Enemy counter UAV offline.
Has that dude been camping there the entire? Oh. No.
Objective Bravo.
I don't understand shotguns in this game.
What's your buck? Sniper's down. Changing mag.
Securing Bravo. We are losing Bravo. Hostile sentry is online.
Ooh.
We have secured 2 objectives. Objective Bravo is compromised.
Yeah, that is
Enemy
dropping
UAV
some
overhead.
frames on the game there, huh?
Enemy is securing Charlie. Securing objective Alpha. The enemy holds all objectives. Secure those positions. We control Alpha. Hostile UAV in the area.
Finally.
Enemy UAV active. The enemy is gaining ground. Push them back.
I heard him out there.
The enemy holds 2 objectives. Get them secure. Ghost.
This dude's just
Got
AFK.
you covered.
Securing objective Charlie. Enemy UAV overhead. Objective Charlie secure. We are taking Bravo. Enemy is taking Charlie. We control all objectives. Objective Charlie is compromised. Hostile VSO incoming.
Enemy in the area.
Enemy is taking Bravo. Shit. We have lost Bravo.
All that flank for nothing.
Enemy UAV active.
Man, this is actually getting way worse. Haven't changed anything.
Securing Charlie. Enemy is taking Alpha. Secure Bravo.
My latency is pretty
Enemy
high.
controls 2 objectives. Push the offense. Securing objective Charlie. Enemy is securing Alpha. We are taking Charlie.
Yeah, this looks so bad.
Hostile UAV in the area.
Yeah, it's like I've dropped 40% of frames over the last 2 minutes. Yeah, 40% of frames dropped in the last 120 seconds. That's not good. I don't think I can play Call of Duty. It's still dropping frames even when I'm not in the game. Yeah, it almost seems like an optimization problem. But I don't know. I just don't know. Oh, have you been following any of the Diablo stuff?
Diablo 4 interview about what open world means for Diablo 4. Now, this is a question that a lot of people have because Diablo 4 does seem like it's taking on some of the Diablo Immortal style where, like, you're out in the town, you're out in the world, and you see other players. I think this is a great idea. I think Lost Ark does it, and it's great. I think Diablo Immortal does it, and it's great. It's actually super good. There are a lot of bad things about Diablo Immortal, but there are a few good things. And I think that the open world interaction and seeing people in Old Tristram and stuff like that, that is awesome. So I hope that they make open world Diablo 4 really mean something. However, Diablo 4 is an ARPG. Every single thing in Diablo 4 should be soloable. But you should also be able to do it in a group if you want to. It should be designed more like PoE in terms of like the requirements of cooperation rather than being designed like Diablo Immortal where you need a raid in order to do certain bosses. That's what I think going into this.
We've done a lot of work on our world map, right? Like we really had to define how the world map works for the first time with Diablo 4, you know, because it is an open world with all of these activities you can.
I think that's the whole thing either.
It needs to effectively show you all of these cool things you can do without turning into a task.
I know, what a legend.
Like, well, I guess I gotta do this. There are 30 flags, I guess I gotta do all 30 of these flags here. You know,
I was there
really
when he joined
I think what they
the RuneScape servers
is
in
they
old
should
school.
create bonuses and
sick.
advantages. I really thought that the Lost Ark Adventurer's Journal, how many of you guys agree with this? I like doing the Lost Ark Adventurer's Journal and collecting all of the seeds, getting all of the different, scenery points, and collecting all of the little quests and all that, except Rapport. Rapport was fucking terrible, and so was, I think there was one other element of it that was fucking terrible. But other than that, I thought it was very good completionism content. I enjoyed it. Yeah, Rapport is dog
and also
shit.
making sure that we're
and like there's a few, I'm not, guys, I'm saying in general, I'm not talking about farming the fucking bananas in Punica or farming that meat food that you get in Yorn. Those were horrible, absolutely not fun, super grindy, sucked dick. But to be fair, you didn't need to do them. That was only for like max level completionism. So I liked being able to have those little goals that I could work towards, and I 100%ed every zone. I'm almost done with South Vern, too.
Communicating important things about the world, like, well, there's a mountain range that runs between these two areas. It's really important that the player knows that, so they're not, like, running along the coast, like, how do I get down here, you know?
That makes sense.
And that needs to come through on the map. So we've done a lot of iteration on how the map can show all the exciting things that you can do, making sure that the map isn't just turning into a checklist, and also the visual design of the map in terms of like showing, being consistent with the overall art design of the world and having that kind of aspect of like an old map that it feels like a part of the world's fantasy.
Yeah, I think having the old map and make it seem like it's an old Dungeons and Dragons map from like the early 80s. That's certainly an aesthetic, right? You go for the traditional fucking simple fantasy. I like it.
But still is accurate and useful, the way that you would expect maps to be in the modern day.
Of course.
It even has a GPS system.
Yes.
I guess that's the next level.
They made a new Jumanji?
The next level of the game.
We're in a game?
Yes, Grandpa Eddie, we are in a game.
You can't be serious.
the new Jumanji.
The big thing I think is worth clarifying is around the story is that, one of the concerns about sort of going putting open world in a big neon sign and flashing that sign is that people have that notion of the Breath of the Wild kind of, it's completely organic and I can go anywhere and do anything and eventually I can figure it out for that's not really our story, right? Our story allows.
They're like, all right, guys, listen. If you're expecting this, settle down. It's not going to be like that. Just calm down, guys. It's not going to be like this. I feel like it's going to be much more like Lost Ark or Diablo Immortal. And for an isometric game like Diablo 4, that's not a bad thing. This is not a bad thing that it's like these other games because this is just the current standard for games like this. Of course, it's going to be sectioned off, and even the camera angle itself adds a number of limitations just by itself.
For non-linearity, but there is a story. We wanted to have a beginning, middle, and end. We wanted to start at a certain place. We wanted to end at a certain place, and so it's more of a branching story, and you can choose kind of what order you want to play the branches. And so there's a pretty quick early decision on once you get past the prologue of I can actually want to go start Act 3 first, and I want to play all the Act 3 story before then I go play Act 1, and then I go play Act 2. And so if I replay the story, I can go and do now Act 2 first versus Act 3 versus.
I feel like every single Blizzard game they do, they go back and forth on this idea. You either have to go through all the zones in one direction, or you have to go through. You can go through any zone however you want. It's like they had it in WoD. You went through all of them. In Legion, you went through them in one way.
True.
In BFA, it was a little bit of both, but basically you could go do whatever you want. In Shadowlands, you had to go through them one way. Now in Diablo 4, you can do this. It's just fucking funny how they just keep changing it over and over and over.
Act 1. So there's sort of branches and come back versus this just it's all over the place. And
this is fine. It's not a bad thing.
I think it's worth clarifying that's kind of when we talk about sort of the freedom of choice around the story. It's really those sorts of things. You can actually not pursue the story for a while, and that's the nice thing about the open world is there's a lot of side quests. There's a lot of things in the world that you can go and do that aren't on the campaign sort of golden path. And the fact
I really hope that, especially at the beginning of the game, they make the campaign the best.
Here's a hot take. I don't. Most open world games that I play, there are exceptions like Breath of the Wild. I don't think necessarily need to be open world games unless they're MMOs. Pretty much.
Best way to level up. I really hope that we don't have a situation where the best way to level up in Diablo 4 is endlessly killing some NPC that respawns really fast. Please do not let this happen.
And the fact is just that the golden path is a branching path that you can decide when you want to do those branches and in what order. The thing that we really clued in on was this notion, sort of, when we were trying to figure out how best to talk about it, there's every inch is built for combat was kind of a phrase that came to mind, which is that was really how it was designed. We didn't design an open world where it was we expect a lot of travel here and we need you to do a lot of downtime here, go play poker over here and go fishing over here. It was really about, we wanted to have that basically anywhere in the open world you could stop, a monster could attack you and you could fight there, right? And so having...
That sounds like a pain in the dick. That you can't go AFK anywhere in the world? You gotta go take a piss, you come back, you're dead? Yeah, I'm worried about that.
When you're working at a density that allows for that, that's a different type of open world. That at any moment in any place,
though. It looks
and so that kind of
really
changed
good.
how we thought about the design and how you move between the zones and how all that stuff plays out. So that's really it's kind of calibrated for action in terms of the open world.
Yeah, in fact, at one point it was too dense.
Yeah, I bet.
And so we dialed it back a little bit. We want it.
I do hope that whatever the map function is in this game, I'm sure that rifts are not completely going away. Whatever in Diablo 4 functions as maps has massive fucking
Yeah, see, I could see that.
Like, I'm talking Lost Ark, Chaos Dungeon.
I should really play Witcher 3. I haven't played Witcher 3 yet. I feel like that's a crime of some sort I'm committing, probably. Is that on Game Pass? No. I'll get it on Steam though. Yeah, it looks really cool. Like everything that I saw about it. I never got around to playing it. I don't know why.
There's 100 mobs coming at you, and you
Love getting lost in a side quest.
you've got to fight them all off. And you know what? Sometimes you'll fucking die.
I love something that really feeds into my, you know, my instinct to procrastinate, right? If I can get distracted for like 10 hours on a string of side quests, oh, I love that.
I really hope that happens.
We didn't want
I would love that.
to have an experience where you were sort of riding through miles of empty terrain to get to cool stuff. We wanted to have all of the world have exciting and interesting things to do. So if you go into, if you decide to do Act 3 first, you know, maybe you're playing through the campaign a second time, and this time you wanted to do Act 3 the first, you're going to have different experiences. It's going to be a little bit more challenging.
Okay.
And you're going to be playing.
You know what this kind of reminds me of a little bit? It reminds me a bit of Demon Souls, where like you would play through the different altars or whatever, the teleportation stones, and then you could do them in any order. There was kind of like a expected order that you would do them in, but other than that, you could choose where you're going to go. This is fine.
Playing through in a different area of the world and seeing strongholds and seeing all of the open world features there. And as you're going through it, there's lots of stuff to do, whether you're mounted or you're riding or you're navigating through on foot. But when we actually had so much stuff that getting through it on a mount was challenging, and so we had to say, like, okay, let's make sure that the roads actually connect to good places and are a good way to travel through this area, so that you can get through.
Well, you don't want to annoy people. Like, if people are traveling on the road on their mount, they're not looking for combat. They just want to get over to the other place.
That's awesome.
That's all. They want to go from point A to point B. And to the extent that you make that annoying, the game does not feel more open world. It does not feel more dangerous. It's just annoying. That's all.
Get to places that you're going expediently, and also have the opportunity to go off the path and see interesting things.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really like with the renown system, that ability to sort of like plays into each zone where you can go and you're going exploring, looking for hidden caches, and you're going and completing.
What would you say, are you saying like an hour to get into it, or like did it take you like a whole like 2 streams to get into it, like a few hours? Not that it matters that much. I just want to know what I'm getting into. Or what I would be getting into.
Certain side quests, you're looking for certain strongholds, to sort of say, okay,
That's
this
cool.
zone's done, and I get benefits of that. Of, okay, I'm going to get skill points that I can actually on my alt I can automatically start with 6 skill points, and so I sort of accelerate.
Huh. Okay, so they might be doing kind of like the Lost Ark Adventurer's Journal. I'm not sure yet, but that's kind of the way it sounds.
My alt progression But I think that's part of the open world we wanted was, again, as we think about choice, whether it be choice of class and
I like high-level meta progression like Lost Ark. I don't like doing it twice. If you told me that I had to go get all my skill point potions again for another character, I would never log on that game again. Straight up. But I enjoyed doing it the first time. It was really fun. The second time, fuck that.
choice of how you look and choice of your skills and choice of your paragon, like that ability to, whether you turn left, turn right, turn around, that's all up to you. And so you can kind of go and explore the world and go after those. What's most important? Do I want to go and do dungeons? Am I going to do world events? Am I going to go do local events? Am I taking on a world boss? Am I, you know, and so that sort of notion of having the freedom of choice, but still having that sort of directionality is really.
I hope that they understand that whenever you have an unbalance, an imbalance in rewards, there is no freedom of choice. So, for example, if the world events give way more experience, reputation, and are relatively easy to do on the same level as the local events, and a player has to decide between doing one or the other, or it is just more efficient to simply do world events and then wait for the next world event, that is all people will do. So these types of ideas are great ideas, but the moment where they fall apart is whenever they actually turn into being like weighted reward systems. Because whenever the weighted reward systems are imbalanced, you actually remove that choice more than you ever could with an actual design. Because the players are choosing to just not do this because it's not efficient for them. Many people that play ARPGs, any semi-hardcore and up player, is playing for like maximizing their character to a large extent, and they will feel like they have to play a certain way if you make that way more efficient.
Of course.
I think is really important, and that's something.
Just 1 second. Somebody made a very good example of this. Like 10 different helmets, but one is clearly best in slot. Yes, that's right. Yeah, there are 10 different helmets, but one of them is just the best helmet, and that's it. Why would anybody farm the other 9?
When working on Gears 5, we added a sort of bowls, like large bowls that were pseudo open world in Gears 5, and we met with a bunch of open world designers, people who worked on Red Dead, people who worked on Tomb Raider, and they always said like it's a little bit of an illusion, is that people want to have, they say they want open world and free choice, but they also want to be told where to go. You know, and so that was one they talked about in Tomb Raider, is that when there's like a road and the road would end.
I feel like it depends on how much you tell people where to go.
About 4 hours.
So, like, for example, are we talking...
Oh, okay. So there's, like, relationship development? Like, is that, like... That's cool. I'm imagining, like, a Stardew Valley style, like, deal. Not like, you know, probably a little more dark than Stardew Valley, but, you know.
The fucking menu where there's 17 different indicators that there are 10 different events that are near you? Or are we talking about the guy says, "Oh, okay, I think that you have to go up to that castle and kill the big guy, and then you're gonna be the Elden Lord"? That's it? Because they're both telling you where to go, but the amount of hand-holding here is vastly different. I would very much prefer the Elden Ring, hey, you gotta kill Diablo. He's over there. Okay. Yep, he's over there whenever you're ready. And you figure out everything else you want to do.
But if you went straight, you would go to where they want you to, but the world is open to you. But you knew if you went straight, that would be the path. And so that's kind of, in some ways, our story is that guidepost. Like, you know where the campaign wants you to go, and where the campaign, you always have a place to come home. Like, you always know, oh, if I go off going crazy for a while and I go and do strongholds and events and open.
Oh, I see. So, like, just like familiarity type stuff. That's cool. I like that. Or like familiarity, or you might like get something and be like, wow, like I don't know what I'll need this for, but I'll keep it.
World
Yeah.
exploration and da-da-da. At the end of the day, you go like, okay, I've been doing this for a while. What am I? Okay, quest. Okay, that's where I have to go in the campaign, and I can get back on the rail and know what, get back on the storyline and go back to doing that. And so, to me, it's a great mixture of that notion of like playing through a story, but also having the ability to go wherever you want, whenever you want.
Okay. Again, the only thing that I want them to make sure does not happen is that boring mob grinding is not the meta to level up in this game. In my opinion, I actually enjoyed the campaign in Diablo 3. I even enjoy the campaign in Path of Exile. Please make it to where the min-max thing is to play through and enjoy the campaign. Yeah, I really hope they do that. It's just my taste. I like getting handheld in big games because I feel like I get lost easily, which stresses me out. Yeah, it's really hard to balance that because I think that you're not the only person that feels that way. I really don't think you are. So I'm not saying you're wrong about that at all. I just don't know necessarily like where to draw the line because I feel like there's too much and not enough. So it just depends on what is soy gamer. I think it's not really soy. It's people that don't really have a lot of time on their hands. So they either have to look something up for a game. And a lot of people view looking something up for a game the equivalent of, you know, you have no idea what to do. You finally, you know, you're on the verge of tears because you can't beat the boss. And you finally ask your mom to take you to GameStop and buy you the Brady Games strategy guide because you just can't get any farther on the water temple. Right? Like, you feel like an absolute fucking pussy. You don't want to have to look this up. You just want to figure it out on your own, and you can't do it. A lot of people do not want to engage in third-party media to play a video game, and I don't necessarily blame them. So it's like, where do you draw the line in the middle there? Because a lot of Elden Ring players, I feel like Elden Ring is very much not a beginner game. It's not like, you know, baby's first video game. This is something that it's a complex game. There's a lot of nuances in it that are, you know, established throughout multiple other games. Yes, you can come in as a brand new video game player and do okay, but you're going to have to work a lot harder than if you played another game that's more geared towards entry-level players. So, yeah, hand-holding super hard in open world, in my opinion, defeats the purpose of having an open world. Well, every game has hand-holding. Like, you know how, like, for example, with the little shrines in Elden Ring where there's the arrow, that's hand-holding, okay? But it's not bad, is it? No, it's not. It's great. So it's not about hand-holding as an idea. It's about the way that it is done. Like, that's the way I see it. That's what I think. So, yeah, I really hope that they're able to nail Diablo 4. To be honest, I feel like there have been a few dumb things that these guys have said about Diablo Immortal, or sorry, about Diablo 4.
I think I figured out how to set up my chat bot, or not my chat bot, my chat box.
I think that it seems like they've got their head in the right place. I'm very excited for Diablo 4. I have heard 95% positive information about the game, and I really hope that it's good. Abso-fucking-lutely, man. Absolutely. The invisible hand of the experience on Rails experience. Exactly, yeah. You want people to feel like they are... You want people to feel like they're not having their hand held, but you're holding their hand. And that's what's so fucking funny about the Elden Ring thing.
Oh, see, look,
is that everybody was saying, like, oh, well, you know, Elden Ring doesn't hold your hand. I don't want them to hold my hand. But it does. So that's the... It's like you want to be the invisible guide. You don't want them to see that you are the you want to be the puppet, but you don't want to see the strings.
Oh, there we go. Always display. So then they'll stay on screen until somebody else says something. I'm having a lot of fun, like, learning all this stuff. Like, I don't know. I got that tinge of narcissism But I love talking to people and like being in front of people. No, dude, like feel free, man. I'm like wandering through all this shit, like I don't know. Backseating encouraged, you know? As with my gaming, as with everything, backseating encouraged. What was I gonna do? Put that as a tag. Backseating encouraged. I probably could. I should. That is a tag, isn't it? Oh. The opener.
Trump's secret documents versus Hillary's emails. Lock her up. No, lock him up. Lock them up? Former President Trump has been fighting to contain and fundraise from the political fallout after the FBI executed a search.
I think this guy's like the biggest, or one of the biggest legal eagle. It's one of the biggest like law YouTube guys. He puts out, he's kind of a lib, but he puts out like pretty good content overall. And then the opening arguments guys, they have like a pod, I think it's like the biggest law podcast. Be interesting to hear them
search warrant at his residence at Mar-a-Lago. We have since learned that agents sought to recover classified documents being stored on site, including confidential documents relating to nuclear weapons or energy. Among the items seized by FBI agents were at least 11 sets of classified documents, 4 marked top secret, 3 marked as secret, and 3 marked as confidential, the lowest level of classified information. After the warrant was unsealed, or at least parts of it, we learned that the FBI is investigating the former president for potential criminal violations of the Espionage Act, obstruction, and destruction of records.
Were they looking for the Hillary Clinton emails that were deleted, but they are around someplace?
In response, several of the ex-president's defenders in Congress have seamlessly flipped from back the blue to defund the FBI. Other allies have opted to invoke their favorite defense of all things Trump, but her emails. And by her, I mean Hillary Clinton, whose use of a private email server while serving as Secretary of State resulted in multiple investigations into her handling of classified information. And many of Trump's defenders have claimed that he is a target of a double standard and a political witch hunt compared to Hillary Clinton. Senator Lindsey Graham even went on to Fox News to suggest that prosecuting Trump while not prosecuting Clinton would result in massive rioting.
If there's a prosecution of Donald Trump for mishandling classified information, after the Clinton debacle, which you presided over and did a hell of a good job, there'll be riots in the streets.
Now, at least facially, this comparison doesn't seem crazy. So let's compare the investigations into Hillary Clinton's private email server with the FBI seizure of Donald Trump's top secret documents at Mar-a-Lago and address whether Clinton received preferential treatment compared to the former president when it comes to the handling of classified material. So what was that whole scandal about? Well, in January 2009, Clinton aides set up an email domain called clintonemail.com on a private server located at her Chappaqua, New York home. While running the State Department, Clinton exclusively used email addresses connected to that private server for both work and personal emails, rather than using a state.gov email for government work and a separate private account for her personal affairs. In May of 2014, the House of Representatives...
Dude, they did... they made that a story for like... Yeah, like almost... It's been like 7 years. They're still talking about this shit.
Was voted to create a select committee to investigate the 2012 terrorist attack on government facilities in Benghazi, Libya, that killed 4 Americans, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. And on March 2nd, 2015, Clinton's private email server became a national story when the New York Times ran a front-page article on the subject. The article detailed that this...
Another thing is like covering all this stuff, like I'm gonna have to be way more careful with TOS.
System, quote, may have violated federal requirements and was characterized as alarming by current and former government archive officials. Clinton claims she set up her own email for convenience, so she would only need to carry one smartphone with one email rather than 2 devices for work and personal affairs. But skeptics believe the more likely explanation was that Clinton, who was gearing up to run for president, wanted to be the sole arbiter of what emails were personal and what emails were government business that needed to be turned over in response to Freedom of Information requests and congressional inquiries. And Clinton's team did did decide on their own what emails needed to be preserved and which did not, igniting a firestorm from critics that exists to this day. And on March 10th, 2015, Clinton's office disclosed that she kept 30,490 work-related emails and deleted approximately 31,830 emails that she had deemed personal, which she described as communications about private matters like yoga routines,
I got nothing
her
to
daughter's
lose,
wedding,
man. What
and
are
her
we gonna
mother's
do?
funeral. However, it turns out those
Strike
emails
me
had
and
only
I
been
go from,
intended to have
what,
been
you
deleted
and
and had not
one
actually been
other
deleted
viewer
until
to
3 weeks
0?
after Congress subpoenaed Clinton's Benghazi-related emails. And back in December 2014, Clinton's former chief of staff, Cheryl Mills,
Plus,
had
it's not
told
like I'm
Platte River
trying to
Networks,
break TOS.
the company that was managing the private server, that Clinton, quote, decided she no
Just
longer needed
things get
access to
crazy
any of
sometimes.
her emails.
Like, imagine, like, I imagine all the stuff I was watching when, like, the war in Ukraine broke out. It's like, I don't know. Some of that's, like, questionable, you know?
Older than 60 days. Mills instructed an unidentified PRN employee to modify the email retention policy to reflect this change. However, the PRN employee mistakenly did not implement this change and did not delete the old emails when requested. Sometime between March 25th and 31st, 2015, this employee erased the emails using a free utility program called BleachBit. Clinton later told the FBI that she was not aware that the emails were deleted in late March 2015, and a Clinton campaign spokesman claimed that the PRN employee was advised to retain all data in compliance with the congressional subpoena, but acted on his own to complete the prior deletion request. In September 2015, investigators with the FBI were able to recover some of the deleted emails. Clinton's critics have accused her and her aides of deleting emails that were under subpoena to cover up wrongdoing. Of course, during the campaign, chants of lock her up were regular features at Trump rallies, while Trump himself famously invited Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's server to find the deleted emails.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the
I remember those days.
30,000 emails that are missing.
Seems
I
like a
think you will
million years ago.
probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
But in July 2015, inspectors general at the State Department and the Director of National Intelligence asked the DOJ to review whether classified information was compromised by Clinton's use of private email. The following month, it was confirmed the FBI was investigating whether Clinton or her staff violated federal laws governing classified information and whether foreign powers or hostile actors had hacked the private server. The FBI investigated Clinton under 3 criminal statutes: 18 U.S.C. 793, which makes it a felony to mishandle classified information in an intentional or grossly negligent way; 18 U.S.C. 1924, which makes it a misdemeanor to knowingly remove classified information from appropriate systems or storage facilities; and 18 U.S.C. 2071, which...
Just a reminder, this is the most charismatic lawyer. And it's still fucking dry.
which makes it illegal to willfully and unlawfully conceal, remove, or destroy federal records. And on July 5th, 2016, FBI Director James Comey held a press conference announcing the department's conclusion that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a criminal case against the former Secretary of State due to lack of requisite criminal intent. Nevertheless, Comey also famously remarked that Clinton and her aides were, quote, extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. Yeah. And on October 28th, 2016, USC. 11 days before the election day, Comey announced the FBI was reviewing new emails that could be relevant to the probe of Clinton's server. The emails were being examined as part of the FBI's investigation into disgraced former Congressman Anthony Weiner, who was the estranged husband of top Clinton aide Huma Abedin. In a November 6, 2016 letter to lawmakers, Comey announced his agency's review of emails was complete and it did not alter the previous conclusion that Clinton should not be prosecuted. 2 days later, Clinton was defeated by Donald Trump in the presidential election. And while there are conflicting accounts of the emails at issue, it seems that of the tens of thousands of emails that were reviewed, 113 were found to contain classified information, and only 3 of those had classification markers. 65 of those emails were deemed secret, and 22 deemed top secret. In 2016, Comey said that Clinton should have known that some of those 113 were classified, but noted that there were others that she might have understandably missed. On June 14th, 2018, the DOJ's Office of Inspector General released a report on the FBI and DOJ's handling of the Clinton investigation. The report found no evidence of political bias and reaffirmed the decision not to prosecute Clinton. And in September 2019, a 3-year State Department investigation concluded that 38 current and former State Department officials were culpable in 91 cases of sending classified information that ended up in Clinton's email server.
Look, I don't like Hillary Clinton that much, but like all these investigations, and it was clearly just a paperwork mix-up. A fucked up one. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
Though the report stated that the private email increased the vulnerability of classified information, investigators found, quote, no persuasive evidence of systemic, deliberate mishandling of classified information. But let's compare that to what we know right now about the Trump Mar-a-Lago scandal, which admittedly is absolutely not complete information at this time. But after the FBI executed a search warrant on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago...
I mean, if it were more than the... Yeah. I mean, if it were more than a paperwork mix-up, it would, I mean, yeah, things would be real bad. But, yeah, exactly. You gotta blame somebody. Well, and you don't, actually, in this case, you don't even have to blame somebody, but it's like, you know, it's a nice football to throw around for the media and against a political opponent. It's convenient. I would argue there's way worse things that Hillary Clinton has done that you could just attack her on, like, on the merits. But, hey, you know, I'm not a GOP strategist.
State. The former president posted a statement on his social media platform, Truth Social, attacking what he called the, quote, weaponization of the justice system, calling the search political targeting at the highest level. Trump claimed that there was a double standard with how the FBI handled Hillary Clinton's email investigation. Quote, Hillary Clinton was allowed to delete and acid wash 33,000 emails after they were subpoenaed by...
I think that this is the funniest thing. Like the acid washing deal. Because they used a program called, like, Bleach. He mentioned it earlier. It was called, like, Bleach something, and I remember reading about it. And it's, like, a legit program. Like, it's a piece of software that people use to, like, you know, clear hard drives. But that got, like, mistranslated by people who, like, you know, they're, like, reading, you know, a Facebook post about a Facebook post about a Facebook post. So, like, now all the conspiracy theories, literally, like, they think that they, like, put it in a bucket of acid, which is just hilarious to me if you know anything about, like, electronics. Like, yeah, that would destroy them, but, like, you don't need to do all that.
Congress, absolutely nothing has happened to hold her accountable. Now, putting aside that Clinton did not literally cover the server in bleach, obviously you take that internally to fight COVID, Trump and his allies have long suggested that Hillary Clinton should have been prosecuted, or at least, at a minimum, prosecuting Trump would be unfair of the double standard created for Clinton. But the use of private emails and other unofficial communications for government employees has come up more often than you'd think, with varying degrees of uproar and concern. And though that certainly doesn't excuse Clinton's behavior, it's probably important to look at other context and comparisons. Among those who recently used private email accounts to conduct official government business in the Trump administration, that includes advisor Stephen Miller, former Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, former National Economic Council Director Gary Cohn, former Deputy National Security Advisor Katie McFarland, and former advisor Steve Bannon. Trump's son-in-law Jared...
All bad. Including Hillary Clinton. All bad. Probably don't do that.
Jared Kushner and daughter Ivanka Trump, both presidential advisors, used either personal email accounts or the messaging app WhatsApp to conduct official business. And since WhatsApp messages are encrypted, there's no record of the message unless Jared and Ivanka actually stored copies of those messages. Kushner's lawyer said his client, quote, took images of communications from WhatsApp and forwarded them to official accounts. But when asked if Kushner used the app to share classified information, his attorney demurred, saying, quote, that's above my pay grade. Former White House trade advisor Peter Navarro, also fighting contempt charges for refusing to testify to the January 6th committee, is currently embroiled in his own presidential records dispute with the National Archives. In August 2022, the DOJ sued Navarro, claiming he refused to turn over emails retained on a private account while working for the Trump administration. And even Colin Powell, who served as Secretary of State under George W. Bush from 2001 to 2005, acknowledged using a laptop on a private line for State Department business, including sending notes to ambassadors and foreign ministers via personal email. And in a
the operational security is so bad.
January 2009 email exchange with Hillary Clinton, Powell told incoming Secretary of State that he used a private phone and computer to do business with foreign leaders and communicate with senior department officials on their own personal email accounts. While Powell said that Clinton was not influenced by his email with respect to setting her up on her own server, he also said he was, quote, not aware at the time of any requirement for private unclassified exchanges to be treated as official records. But again, to emphasize, this is all bad. It's a problem in Washington, whether it's Hillary Clinton or anyone else doing it. Now, before we get to the legal
100%.
consequences, let's compare and contrast some of the factual differences, because some of them just jump right out. First of all,
Okay, when does
at
he
the
get
time
to
of-
when does he get to like opening arguments, guys? Because that's what I want to.
And while it wouldn't change the underlying culpability, there was a big difference in how the situation was applied to investigators. But just because the situation is different doesn't mean that Hillary Clinton should not have been prosecuted. So let's talk about the charge that she received preferential treatment. On July 5th, 2016, FBI Director James Comey held a press conference where he made the following statement.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
So was Comey's statement that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case correct or evidence of political bias? Well, in 2016, the FBI told the Senate Judiciary Committee that, quote, extremely careless was Comey's common sense way of describing the actions of Clinton and her colleagues and was not intended to describe the legal standard for gross negligence under the Espionage Act. But Trump and his supporters have argued if Clinton was indeed extremely careless with the classified materials, the failure to prosecute her, at least for grossly mishandling classified material under the Espionage Act, was a miscarriage of justice. But it's not enough to look at the statute, we have to look at how prosecutors have brought charges under the section. Now, back in 2016, Andrew Torres, the lawyer and host of the podcast Opening Arguments, which is excellent, researched all prosecutions under the Espionage Act. And out of 240 cases, Torres only found 9 cases that had been brought under the gross negligence part of the statute. And in all of those gross negligence cases, the defendant was found to have made, quote, a deliberate decision to hide or destroy information that the defendant knew to be confidential and improperly in his possession. Torres concluded that Comey's statement that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case against Clinton was correct, writing, quote, I can find no case anywhere in which any person has ever been sentenced under the Espionage Act without evidence that said person unambiguously knew the material that they were removing was confidential. Since that fact is not present here, I conclude that Hillary Clinton received no special treatment when the government declined to indict her.
We're talking about 18 U.S.C. 793. That's the Espionage Act. It is the same law with some amendments that was used to prosecute Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Virtually all of the prosecutions under it are for
Oh, that's a
what we
good
typically
story.
think of as
We should get into
spy
that.
stuff, right? Someone with access
Some
to
spy
documents that
shit.
relate to the national defense steals or makes a copy of those documents.
That was like
And
real spy
prosecutors
stuff,
don't
too.
even have to prove that person ever sold it to a hostile foreign power or another spy. You just have to prove that they took the document. You can infer that they weren't going to do anything good with it. And while espionage no longer carries the death penalty, it is a felony with a 10-year maximum sentence. And that's why we never find any cases that are even a close analog to Secretary Clinton's conduct. It isn't espionage. When someone leaves a file cabinet or a door unlocked or leaves a top secret document out on their desk, that's certainly extremely careless, but those cases aren't considered espionage. And you probably noticed I use the weasel word virtually. Virtually all the prosecutions under the Espionage Act are for spy stuff. But what about the ones, the handful that aren't? Consider U.S. v. Gonzalez. This involved an Air Force staff sergeant who was stationed in Anchorage, Alaska, and was taken off to go party with his buddy who worked for an oil company. Sarge grabbed a bunch of his stuff to give to his buddy, and while doing so, accidentally grabbed 2 classified documents. When he got to Port Bay, he discovered his mistake, but instead of calling his superior and owning up to it, he told his buddy, hey man, I'm just going to stick these 2 documents in your desk and totally make sure you remind me before I leave to take them back with me to the Air Force Base, okay? For whatever reason, use your imagination, the Sarge and his buddy, totally spaced on the documents.
Oh, yeah, I wonder.
Just left them there in the desk. That might not have been such a big deal, except that the buddy didn't actually have his own desk. He shared it with another guy named Nick, and Nick got to work Monday morning, opened up his desk drawer, saw the bright red confidential sticker on the cover sheet of the two documents, and freaked out. As you do. He called his boss called the Air Force, and one thing led to another. Sarge was sentenced to 43 days of confinement, a little less than the 10 years, discharged for bad conduct, reduced in rank. Or consider U.S. v. Gaffney, which coincidentally involved another Air Force.
Unironically, I think that's like a reasonable thing, right? You fuck up that bad and you leave like classified documents. Nothing bad happens, but you were like that irresponsible. Yeah, maybe like a little taste of like, Air Force jail for you. 43 days? Sure. I don't think jail's usually that good of an idea, but like.
Or staff sergeant, although this guy would never ever trek off to northern Alaska for a weekend-long bender. No, this guy was a good family man. He just wanted to spend more time at home with his pregnant wife, and so he did. But one of Sarge's job duties was to shred classified documents, and being that this was 1982, shredders were super slow. Rather than
just
spending hours shredding documents.
Not like a felony charge or anything like that to where it'll like ruin your life, but enough for you to be like, yeah, I'm gonna make sure I don't fuck that up again. A lower rank now in the Air Force, whatever.
Documents like a dumbbell.
It's
He did
pretty
what,
important.
Anybody with a pregnant wife might do. Grabbed all the documents and deposited them in a nearby dumpster. Problem solved. But except that helicopter parenting wouldn't be invented for 2 decades, so kids played in dumpsters all the time. Some rugrat found the documents, took them home, daddy found them under the bed, hey, could have been worse, and called the Air Force. All of these cases that don't quite fit into the spy stuff category are like this. They're cases in which the defendant absolutely...
Some kid rifling through the trash. You find like confidential documents. Oh, cool. What kind of kid is that?
Knew that they had compromised documents in their possession, and then they still did the stupid thing, and then they tried to actively cover their tracks. As Jim Comey put it, all of the cases prosecuted involve some combination of clearly intentional and willful mishandling of classified information, the very behavior for which Secretary Clinton was exonerated.
But look, don't take legal advice from a podcast. Take legal advice from a YouTube channel. But why would prosecutors only bring cases involving deliberate conduct when the statute requires only gross negligence? Well, that's because the gross negligence statute might be unconstitutionally vague. Under the vagueness doctrine, statutes that are vague, indefinite, or uncertain violate due process because such laws fail to give the individual proper notice of how to conform their conduct to follow the law. And in a case called Gorin versus the United States, the Supreme Court suggested that the then operative provisions of the Espionage Act was not unconstitutionally vague only because it criminalized intentional conduct. Quote, the obvious delimiting words in the statute are those requiring intent or reason to believe that the information to be obtained is to be used to the injury of the United States, which requires those prosecuted to have acted in bad faith. And in an August 16, 2016 letter explaining the decision not to bring the charges, the FBI told the Senate Judiciary Committee that the DOJ had only prosecuted for intentional mishandling of documents because the gross negligence language is likely unconstitutional. They said, quote, there are concerns about the constitutional implications of criminalizing grossly negligent conduct without requiring the government to prove that the person knew he or she was doing something wrong. The letter noted that only one person in 99 years had been charged with mishandling classified documents in a grossly negligent way, a charge that was dismissed when the defendant pleaded guilty to making false statements. So, given the potential unconstitutionality of gross negligence prosecutions, the DOJ has opted to almost exclusively prosecute cases involving only intentional misconduct. But is Trump subject to an unfair double standard by law enforcement? Well, so far legal experts are pretty much unanimous that Trump's case is much, much worse, and it's not subject to a double standard. As more information about the FBI's search has been released, legal experts have weighed in on whether Trump has been treated unfairly when compared to Clinton. David Loffman, who headed the Justice Department's counterintelligence section until 2018, said there's simply no comparison between Clinton's emails and the judge-approved search of Mar-a-Lago. Quote, people sling these cases around to suit their political agenda, but every case has to stand on its own circumstances. For the department to pursue a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago tells me that the quantum and quality of the evidence they were reciting in a search warrant and affidavit that an FBI agent swore to was likely so pulverizing in its force as to eviscerate any notion that the search warrant and this investigation is.
The other thing too is like the only reason that there wasn't a similar search warrant executed on Hillary Clinton's properties is because she cooperated and gave them all the stuff that they wanted, like, right off the bat. And if she didn't, they're like, hey, we're missing this. She let them look, right? So they didn't need a warrant. The fact that there's a warrant in Trump's case makes it clear that, like, they asked for stuff, and he was like, or his team was like, either lied, said they don't have it, or nah, come get it. Right? That's how warrants work.
Is politically motivated. And Loffman has experience in this area. Not only did he personally oversee the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, he also managed the investigation into David Petraeus. And here's a quick summary of what led to the FBI getting a search warrant to recover classified documents and presidential records from Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago. When Trump left office in January 2021, boxes of records that his White House counsel said should have gone to the National Archives were instead shipped to Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago. Officials at the National Archives spent 8 months in negotiations.
Literally in 4K.
With Trump to return the documents. 15 documents were returned in January 2022. Upon reviewing the documents, though, NARA saw documents clearly marked classified intermingled with non-classified info, resulting in a referral to the DOJ to investigate possible mishandling of classified material. The FBI had evidence that dozens of additional boxes with classified info were still being kept at Mar-a-Lago, so the DOJ obtained a grand jury subpoena seeking documents bearing classification markings that were still in Trump's possession. On June 3rd, Trump's custodian of records turned over additional boxes to the DOJ, then signed a certification swearing that a diligent search had been done and all responsive documents produced. Trump's lawyer told the FBI agents that all boxes of classified records had been kept in a secure storage room. However, the FBI uncovered multiple sources of evidence that the response to the grand jury subpoena was incomplete and the classified documents were still on site. The FBI also had evidence that, quote, government records were likely concealed and removed from the storage room, and that efforts were likely taken to obstruct the government's investigation. So it's against this backdrop, over a year of delays in returning all classified documents voluntarily, not turning over documents in response to the subpoena, and evidence of obstruction of justice, that the government finally got a search warrant for Mar-a-Lago and conducted the search. Of course, we got more.
Yes. Again, like, they wouldn't have wanted to do it this loud. They don't want to. The DOJ doesn't want to be in another political, looking like they're acting politically. That's not. They want to do the opposite of that. So this was like their kind of last resort deal.
More information on August 18th, 2022, when Judge Bruce Reinhardt, the magistrate overseeing the Mar-a-Lago search, unsealed the warrant cover sheet, revealing the FBI was investigating potential violations of 18 U.S.C. 793, willful retention of national defense information, 18 U.S.C. 2071, concealment or removal of government records, and 18 U.S.C. 1519, obstruction of a federal investigation. Clinton was also investigated for violating Section 2071. But Bradley Moss, a well-respected lawyer who handles national security cases, said that the cases of Clinton and Trump are significantly different given Trump's willful retention of classified documents. Quote, Trump took properly marked hard copy classified documents from the White House, shipped them to Florida, and stored them in an unsecured location at his residence. Moss also noted that while some Trump documents were clearly marked as classified, the presence of classified information in Clinton's emails was less obvious. Quote, the emails were never marked as classified because there were communications from unclassified government accounts. And similarly, the FBI's August 2016 letter justifying its decision not to charge Clinton, the Bureau noted how past prosecutions involved some combination of clearly intentional and willful mishandling of classified info, significant quantities of classified info exposed to support an inference of intent, or indications of disloyalty to the United States, none of which were present with Clinton. As examples, the FBI cited past prosecutions of ex-CIA Director David Petraeus, who knowingly exposed significant classified materials to his biographer turned mistress and then lied about it when confronted, former Bill Clinton National Security Advisor Sandy Berger, who stole clearly marked classified documents from the National Archives by hiding them in his clothes, and Afghanistan Naval Reservist Brian Nishimura, who removed hundreds of clearly classified documents from classified U.S. military information systems, lied to investigators about them, and then destroyed large quantities of classified documents. Contrasting these cases with the Clinton case, the FBI highlighted Clinton received 3 emails containing C markings for confidential, and that wasn't clear evidence of knowledge or criminal intent. As further evidence of lack of criminal intent, the FBI highlighted that Clinton did not originate this information, but rather the email chains were forwarded by staff members with the confidential markings buried deep in the email threads. The DOJ's 2018 report on Clinton's
Not gonna
emails
lie, I
also
thought he was
concluded
gonna
that the
interview
classification
the
markings
open
were
arguments
unclear.
guys.
In addition, over
Not
2,000
just cite
emails were
them.
retroactively
That's why I
characterized
clicked
as
on this
including
video.
classified information, which underscores the uncertainty regarding the status of Clinton's emails. In Trump's case, the ex-president was explicitly notified not only that he was illegally in possession.
I'm bored, so let's do this
Corpus
one.
juris,
This one's more
ad hominem to
fun.
Post
Has
hoc
to do with the
ergo
onion.
propter hoc. Quod, I know all of these things, and it's so hard to say. Every once in a while, a genius changes the legal landscape forever. Sometimes that genius isn't even a lawyer. And scholars will look back on history as the days before the Onion filed its Supreme Court brief and the days after. Because we are all changed.
I heard about this.
Now, it's not surprising because according to the Onion Supreme Court brief, the Onion rose from its humble beginnings as a print newspaper in 1756 and now enjoys a daily readership of 4.3 trillion and has grown into the single most powerful and influential organization in human history. Yes, the Onion has filed its first ever amicus brief, and it started with the top of the U.S. Supreme Court. Its brief immediately took law Twitter by storm, and I've read a lot of briefs in my time, and trust me, they are not all as funny and precise as this one. And people have asked if real lawyers were actually involved in this particular brief. Yes, the authors of this momentous brief, The Onion's head writer Mike Gillis, and The Onion's lawyers of record Stephen J. Van Stempfort and D. Andrew Portinga, who are real people, I actually checked on that, pulled no punches in their brief, writing, quote, "The Onion knows that the federal judiciary is staffed entirely by total Latin dorks. They quote Catalyst in the original Latin in chambers. They sweetly whisper stare decisis to their spouse's ears. They mutter
Oh,
cui
no.
bono under their breath while picking up after their neighbor's dogs. So the Onion knew that unless it pointed to a suitably Latin rallying cry, its brief would be operating far outside the court's vernacular. I feel so seen. But the question must be asked, is this a great Supreme Court brief or the greatest Supreme Court brief in history? But first we have to ask ourselves, why is the Onion filing a friend of the court brief with the Supreme Court? Well, they're standing up for Anthony Novak, an Ohio man who started mocking his local police department in March of 2016.
Hell
Novak's
yeah.
Facebook page had the same name, cover photo, and profile photo as the Parma Police Department's official page, but it was
Yes.
designated a community page and didn't have the official blue checkmark verifying it as an official page. Novak's page displayed the satirical slogan,
We know
crime. Now,
we know
Parma
crime.
is Cleveland, Ohio's biggest suburb, and it has long had a reputation for being just a little bit extra. And by that, I mean it has a well-documented problem with racism. In the 1970s, the Justice Department concluded that Parma's near-manic growth was a classic example of white flight. The DOJ found that the city of Parma engaged in a pattern and practice of racial discrimination in housing in violation of the Fair Housing Act of 1968, and the city didn't settle with the DOJ until 1998. The Parma
Holy
Police
shit.
Department has been cited for refusing to hire minority police officers. Cleveland is 51% black. Its largest suburb is still less than 5% black. And I'll note parenthetically that one of the members of Team Legal Eagle is from Cleveland and informs me that the Parma police are notorious for prosecuting drivers for driving while black. Now, legendary public access host Goulardi, father of
It's just a
director
Midwest town,
Wes
baby.
Anderson, relentlessly mocked Parma for decades. Anthony Novak clearly knew this history when he set out to mock the local cops. As Cleveland Magazine once said, quote, "Everyone in the country makes fun of
Based.
Cleveland and everyone in Cleveland makes fun of Parma." Now, Novak's page was up for 6 hours, and during that time it published
That's
6
it?
satirical posts. The first was an apology for, quote, failing to inform the public about an armed robbery of a Subway sandwich shop by a white man, while requesting information to, quote, bring to justice an African-American woman who was loitering in front of the shop during the robbery. Novak then published a fake announcement that new police officers would be recruited based on a, quote, 15-question multiple-choice definition test followed by a hearing test, and strongly encouraged minorities to not apply. He followed that up with an update about a pedophile reform event, promising that anyone who made it through the stations would be removed from the sex offender registry and accepted as an honorary police officer.
Oh,
and by
no.
now, you are probably thinking that surely everyone who saw these pages knew it was a parody and, of course, was protected by the First Amendment. But that's not how the Parma police saw it.
That's pretty
they
funny.
got a few phone calls from confused citizens. They immediately posted a warning on the police department's real page, letting people know that the other page was fake and that the department
And the department got so butthurt about this that they're at the Supreme Court now?
was investigating. The comments to the notice reveal that most citizens understood what was happening. Now, Novak thought it would be funny to post the police notice on his page verbatim, so that's what he did. Officer Kevin Riley didn't like that, and so he went on the local news where he said that the cops were launching an investigation into the page's owner. Riley described the page as, quote,
but frankly, they're crude, they're demeaning, and they're very inflammatory. Our concern right now is public safety.
Now, as legally idiotic as
That is
those
the baldest
statements
man
were,
I have
Riley's
ever
comments did prompt Novak to take his page down, but the Parma officials did not let up. Instead, the police subpoenaed Facebook to unmask Novak. The page wasn't even up by the time that they discovered Novak's identity. Now, once they knew it was Novak, they consulted with prosecutor Timothy Dobek. Dobek and the officers searched for a crime to fit the situation and ultimately landed on Ohio Revised Code Section 2909.04.
This person made fun of us. Let's dig through all the crimes and see if we can find one that fits.
B, a felony statute prohibiting the knowing, quote, use of any computer to disrupt, interrupt, or impair the functions of any police operation. Now, how did Novak disrupt the police department? His parody caused 11 people to call up the station in confusion. But that was enough for a local magistrate who found that the cops had probable cause to search Novak's house.
11 people.
The police then conducted a SWAT raid on Novak's home,
What?
confiscating his gaming consoles, computers, and tablets. Police arrested Novak and threw him in jail for 4 days. Detective Thomas Connor told
This man got swatted for a parody account? Yikes, dude.
the grand jury that the callers, quote, honest to God, actually believed the page was real. The grand jury indicted Novak for disrupting public
That's so
services, a
stupid,
fourth-degree
dude.
felony that carried a maximum penalty
I
of 18
hate
months
this.
in prison. But not surprisingly, later, during a deposition, Connor admitted that none of the callers thought the parody Facebook page was real, but the damage was done. The city continues to insist to this day that 10 of those calls wasted precious dispatch time. But let's be real. Parma dispatchers probably get more useless phone calls when Rudy Strudel runs out of donuts on Packy Day. I guess that's a Cleveland joke. Now, Novak stood trial, and lucky for him, the jury acquitted him. And after he was acquitted, he then sued the city of Parma, the police department,
Hell
and the
yeah,
police
brother.
officers for violating his civil rights, because that's exactly
Damn right.
what they did. The police officers, not surprisingly, raised qualified immunity as a defense. Now, I've talked about qualified immunity in the past, but here's a recap of this judicially invented doctrine. Qualified immunity protects state officials from being held accountable on a federal level for violating a person's constitutional rights. Under this doctrine, an officer or state actor is immune from civil liability if a court has not previously stated that the officer's act was unconstitutional in a prior court decision. It's an idea that if there isn't a court decision on this type of constitutional violation, then they don't have notice that they were violating someone's constitutional rights.
It's stupid.
Qualified immunity only allows lawsuits to move forward if state officials violated a, quote, clearly established statutory or constitutional right. And when determining whether or not a right was clearly established, courts consider whether a hypothetical reasonable officer would have known that the defendant's conduct violated the plaintiff's rights. What started as a way to ensure that officials were not held liable for things that they had no way of knowing were unconstitutional has now become really a serious impediment for holding police officers accountable. The Federal District Court for Northern Ohio denied the Parma officer's motion for qualified immunity, but the Sixth Circuit eventually overturned that decision. The court held it was not clearly established that Novak's copying of the department's notice onto his page and the deletion of user comments were protected speech. Under the disruption statute, quote, the officers could reasonably believe that some of Novak's Facebook activity was not parody, not protected, and fair grounds for probable cause. The Sixth Circuit put special value on the fact that a prosecutor and magistrate agreed that there was probable cause that Novak violated the statute. Now, with that somewhat depressing background in mind, we can turn to how in the world does this involve The Onion? Well, when someone...
I can answer that. Because The Onion is a messy bitch, and I love that. It's like half of what The Onion is all about. They're not afraid to get in the mix, you know, comment on some things, everything that they can. No fear. That's right.
Files an amicus brief, they have to start by stating why they have an interest in the case that the court should consider. So the brief starts out
Great
by
writers
discussing
over
the
there, by the
interests
way.
of the amicus, the friend of the court, in this case, The Onion. Quote, The Onion is the world's leading news publication, offering highly acclaimed, universally revered coverage of breaking national, international, and local news events.
No
Quote,
lies
The Onion's
detected.
keen, fact-driven reportage has been cited favorably by one or more local courts, as well as Iran and the Chinese state-run media. Now, I love this part because it goes to the heart of what makes good parody. The ability of the satirist to actually make people think it might be real. And The Onion has tricked many people into reporting its stories as fact. And back in 2012, Iran's Fars news agency published a story claiming that a Gallup poll found that rural white Americans preferred Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad over President Barack Obama. Although that feels like it might have been true, unfortunately, Ahmadinejad was ineligible for U.S. presidency, so we'll never know if his stance about women covering
Darn.
their hair would have gained traction in rural Indiana, though I worry that it would. Chinese state media also
might
thought
have.
that The Onion story declaring Kim Jong-un the sexiest man alive was real. The Onion wrote that Kim was, quote, blessed with an air of power that masks an unmistakably cute, cuddly side. Kim made this newspaper's editorial board swoon with his impeccable fashion sense, short hairstyle, and of course that famous smile. Well, look, when you put it that way, it's easy to see why the 45th president had such a crush. Now, The Onion brief also points out that it has a good track record of predicting future events. Quote, one such coup was The Onion's scoop revealing that a former president kept nuclear secrets strewn around his beach home's basement 3 years before it even happened.
That's
Fact
true,
check,
they
true.
did that.
Now, The Onion really did write a story in 2017 about the nuclear briefcase being left behind at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, it
noting
wasn't
that it
exactly
had already been there
documents,
for
but...
almost 2 weeks. Mar-a-Lago assistant manager Chris Mahoney reportedly wondered if anyone was coming to collect the nuclear briefcase from the club's lost and found. Anyway, The Onion filed this brief to protect the rights of parody creators who, as a class, would prefer not to be arrested for being funny. Quote, The Onion files this brief to protect its continued ability to create fiction that may ultimately merge into reality. As the Globe's premier parodists, The Onion's writers also have a self-serving interest in preventing political authorities from imprisoning humorists. This brief is submitted in the interest of at least mitigating their future punishment. And the brief zeroes in on the Sixth Circuit's holding that the parodist would not be protected unless they let the audience in on the
In all
joke by
seriousness,
warning them
it does make sense that they're like, yeah, we don't want our writers to, like, you know, get involved with, like, court cases and stuff, so we're gonna insert ourselves here.
Parody is not true. The Onion notes that, quote, some forms of comedy don't work unless the comedian is able to tell the joke with a straight face. Parody is the quintessential example. Parodists intentionally inhabit the rhetorical form of their target in order to exaggerate or implode it, and by doing so demonstrate the target's illogic or absurdity. Now, the hilarity of the brief is an example of the thing it seeks to protect, an ultra-serious take on a real thing that by its nature will fool some people. Or as The Onion's lawyers put it, quote, for parody to work, it has to plausibly mimic the original. And as The Onion points out in its brief, quote, tu stultus es, you are dumb. These Latin words have been The Onion's motto and guiding light since it was founded in 1988 as America's finest news source, leading its writers toward the paper's singular purpose of pointing out that its readers are deeply gullible people. And they're not just crapping on their own audience. They're making an important point that, quote, tricking readers into believing that they're seeing a serious rendering of some specific form, a pop song lyric, a newspaper article, a police beat, and then allowing them to laugh at their own gullibility when they realize that they've fallen victim to one of the oldest tricks.
Yes, everybody is not that smart. Everybody thinks that they're smarter than they are, rather. And once you figure that out, then things get easier.
In the history of rhetoric. And despite the literal...
And I'd argue that The Onion does good work making people realize that. I think it's a service to society.
falsity of parody and satire. It literally has to be false to work. It enjoys First Amendment protection, as it should. And when assessing whether satirical speech is defamation, the courts consider what a reasonable reader would have understood the author to have said, not the literal meaning of the words. And the capacity to fool the audience is essential. So in other words, a person... Billy, no, you can't be up here. So in other words, a person doesn't have to publish a disclaimer that the writing is fake. That would ruin the joke. Imagine how it would have ruined the punchline of Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, which argued with a straight face that the starving
Have a good
Irish
afternoon.
should just eat
I'm gonna
their
get
own
off
babies.
soon anyway. It's
And
almost
if you're
2.
worried about
I've
the
been
Onion
live
being
for
humble and
3
comparing
hours.
itself to Jonathan Swift, well, you don't
Still
need
working
to
out the
be. You're right,
gaming
quote,
kinks,
To be clear, the
so.
Onion is not trying to compare itself to Jonathan Swift. Its writers are far more talented, and their output will be read long after that hack Swift's has been lost to the sands of time. Still, The Onion and its writers share with Swift the common goal of replicating a form precisely in order to critique it from within. And as The Onion points out, Swift's goals was the same, to replicate the form, the boring economic paper, in order to critique it from within. And that's why the full title of Swift's paper was A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Children of Poor People from Being a Burthen to Their Parents or Country and for Making Them Beneficial to the Public. And The Onion writers do this every day to hilarious effect. The brief points to an Onion article titled, quote, "The Supreme Court Rules, Supreme Court Rules," which is meant to mimic the form of the Associated Press. It starts with the sentence, "In a landmark decision Monday, the United States Supreme Court ruled 8-1 that it rules." And The Onion follows the Associated Press form straight through into the article. It says, quote, "Justice Anthony Kennedy, writing on behalf of the majority, noted that, quote, while the U.S. Constitution guarantees equality of power among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, it most definitely does not guarantee equality of coolness. And in this regard, the judicial branch kicks that which can be construed as total and complete ass." So the power of the parody arises from that dissonance into which the reader has been drawn. And The Onion's brief argues that because parody mimics the real thing, it has even more power to critique the real thing. Quote, "Parodists can take apart an authoritarian cult of personality, point out the rhetorical tricks that politicians use to mislead their constituents, and even undercut a government's institutions' real-world attempts at propaganda." For The Onion, this has worked time and time again, since its articles tend to expose leaders who have no ability to distinguish fact from fiction. The brief singles out one of them, Republican Congressman John Fleming, who, quote, "believed that he needed to warn his constituents of a dangerous escalation of the pro-choice movement after reading The Onion's headline, Planned Parenthood opens $8 billion abortionplex." Of course, Yelp reviewers got in on the gag and reviewed the fake Kansas abortionplex, which convinced other readers that this was a real thing and, quote, "we taxpayers were paying for it." The legendary abortionplex story is still fooling people in 2022. And although the brief tongue-in-cheek called Onion readers stupid, it backtracks on that claim in explaining the mental capacity of reasonable readers who, quote, "do not need to be told explicitly what they have no serious trouble figuring out for themselves." And the brief notes that the Supreme Court has already indicated that disclaimers aren't needed. They refer to a footnote of the opinion of Campbell versus Acuff Rose, which of course was a very famous fair use case where the dispute was about whether the rap group Two Live Crew had a right to publish a parody of Roy Orbison's Pretty Woman. And in that case, the court said that Two Live Crew need not label their whole album or even the song a parody in order to claim fair use protection, nor should Two Live Crew be penalized for this being its first parodic essay. Parody serves its goals whether labeled or not, and there's no reason to require parody to state the obvious, or even the reasonably perceived. And The Onion argues convincingly that the Sixth Circuit's holding is contrary to the case law. The court ruled that the Parma cops, quote, "could reasonably believe that some of Novak's Facebook activity was not parody, primarily because Mr. Novak deleted comments that made clear the page was fake. But the brief argues that the lack of explicit disclaimer makes no difference to whether a reasonable reader would discern that this speech was parody. And The Onion takes issue with the Sixth Circuit's view that the search warrant insulates the police from liability, since other authority figures also shared the same wrong-headed view of free speech. Quote, "This was not a close call on the facts. Mr. Novak's spoof Facebook post advertised that the Parma Police Department was hosting a pedophile reform event in which successful participants could be removed from the sex offender registry and become honorary members of the department after completing puzzles and quizzes. That the department had discovered an experimental technique for abortions and would be providing them to
objectively
teens for
hilarious
free in
and
a closed van,
obviously
that
parody.
the department was soliciting job applicants, but that minorities were, quote, strongly encouraged not to apply, and that the department was banning city residents from feeding homeless people in, quote, an attempt to have the homeless population eventually leave our city due to starvation." So yeah, you'd have to be pretty dumb to think that the Facebook posts were real and also criminal. Novak can't help
To be
it
fair,
that
it's
the
like
magistrate judge and city attorney are closer
not
to
that
the
far
lowest
off from the
common
real
denominator
policy.
than the average reasonable reader. And The Onion also argues that parodists should not be prosecuted for telling jokes. Now, this seems self-explanatory, so The Onion lawyers crafted a couple paragraphs just to keep your attention. Quote, "This is the 15th page of a convoluted legal filing intended to deconstruct the societal implications of parody, so the reader's attention is almost certainly wandering. That's understandable. So here's a paragraph of gripping legal analysis to ensure that every jurist who reads this brief is appropriately impressed by the logic of its argument and the lucidity of its prose. Bona vacantia, de bonus asportatus, writ of certiorari, de minimis, jus ascrescendi, forum non conveniens, corpus juris, ad hominem tu coque, post hoc ergo propter hoc. Quod, I know all of these things, it's so hard to say. Quod est demonstratum, actus reus, scandulum magnatum.
Just a
pactum
list of
reservati
Latin
dominum."
phrases.
See what happened? This brief itself went from a discussion of parody's function and the quite serious historical and legal arguments in favor of strong protections for parodic speech to a curveball mocking the way legalese can be both impenetrably boring and belie the hollowness of a legal position. That's the setup and punchline idea again. It would not have worked quite as well if this brief had said the following: "Hello there, reader. We're about to write an amicus brief about the value of parody. Buckle up because we're going to be doing some fairly outre things, including commenting on this text form itself." So yeah, it's not good to punish funny people for saying funny things, even if those things may be offensive. And The Onion promises to, quote, "continue its socially valuable
This is
role
good.
in
I gotta
disciplining
read this whole
sunlight
thing.
into the halls of power, and it would vastly prefer that sunlight not be measured out to its writers in 15-minute increments in an exercise yard." And this YouTube channel agrees. Now, normally a lawyer's conclusion is a pretty dry summary of what they want
That's
the court
hilarious.
to do, but here The Onion aims high once again. Quote, "The petition for certiorari should be granted, the rights of the people vindicated, and various historical wrongs remedied. The Onion would welcome any of the three, particularly the first." So what happens next? Well, the Supreme Court will decide whether to take Novak's case or not, and potentially overturn the Sixth Circuit's decision. If it does not, then the Sixth Circuit decision remains good law, despite it being bad law. But you'll be able to read all about the Supreme Court's next decision in today's sponsor, Morning Brew, because that's my favorite way to catch up with pop culture and the news. In fact, you could have already learned about The Onion's brief because they covered it and I read it in my email. I've actually been subscribed to
Nice
Morning Brew
ad
for
segue,
forever.
bro.
It's one of my absolute favorite
Fucking
newsletters,
killed
and
it,
I'm
dude.
thrilled to tell you why. Because Morning Brew, if you didn't
We'll
know
watch
already,
the ad.
is a free daily newsletter delivered Monday
Don't
through
want to
Sunday.
steal his
It gets you up
content.
to speed on business, finance,
I mean,
tech,
I do,
and
but-
law in just 5 minutes, and provides a fantastic quick summary of the most important issues while being witty, irreverent, and informative. And did I mention it's completely free? This week I learned all about how Elon Musk actually bought Twitter for real this time, how Kanye West was getting
real
denounced
this
by
time.
everyone, and why Matt Damon killed everyone's investment.
Which is a disaster.
It's
We'll
basically
talk about that
exactly
on
the mix
Tuesday.
of news that I'm actually interested in, and stuff that I didn't even know
I can't wait
wanted
to see
know
what the
about.
situation
And it's all
is
written in
Tuesday.
a hilarious style. Morning Brew is one of the few emails that I actually open every day. So Legal Eagles, this one is a complete no-brainer. Morning Brew is completely free and it takes less than 15 seconds to
I've heard
subscribe.
good things.
Just click
I
on the
don't
link
use
that's
it
on screen
myself,
right
but-
now or in the description to get Morning Brew for free. And not only will you get a newsletter that you'll actually read, you'll actually help out this channel too. So click on the link below to get Morning Brew right away. And after you sign up, you should click over here on this playlist to watch more Legal Eagle,
Good
or I'll
video.
see you in court.
All right. Well, I've got a bunch of different stuff that I want to do on Tuesday, more like news-oriented stuff. We'll go over midterms. Hopefully we'll know, like, we're pretty sure that the Democrats have the Senate. Here, I'll just pull it up right now. We're pretty sure that the Democrats have the Senate. Still a path for Democrats in the House, but it's looking a little tighter. Hopefully we will know by Tuesday. We can go over all that. Kind of do a real news day. Newsday. All right. On that note, I'm gonna play us out. Have a wonderful afternoon. Don't work too hard. Ever. And we will see you Tuesday. Adios.